All right, all right. Peace, family. Thank you for your patience. Man, we are in for a treat tonight. We're gonna have a good time tonight. I'm with the brother Sevan Bomar. I'm about to bring the brother on in a second. An amazing title tonight, family. An amazing title. Star Power. How to harness power from the stars. This is the perfect God to have to do this show. So get comfortable, hit the like button, tell your friends and family we are live. You are in for a metaphysical treat tonight. And like always, family, let's get to a commercial. Let's get to this Gathering of the Masters commercial, and then we'll be back in 30 seconds.
This is a gather. 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 This is a gather of the masses. This is a gather. 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 This is a gather of the masses. This is a gather. 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 This is a gather of the masses.
All right. Once again, family, if you was not fortunate enough to make it to the spiritual conference of the year, the Gathering of the Masters is available on my Patreon. You just go to patreon.com/blackmagic363 and you can see the entire conference. It was absolutely amazing. With that being said, want to welcome back to the stage Sevan. They call this the Madison Square Garden of Consciousness. So it's electrifying in here. That Jordan used to say Madison Square Garden was electrifying, but none other than Sevan Bomar.
I believe it. I believe it. Wow, it's been a minute since we have dove in. I think we had this 1 year orbit, and we got to make it a little bit more frequent because I always be having gems to drop. And of course, I love being in the space. I love being with the tribe. We of course share quite a few common members, so I'm always hearing about everything happening over here, and just the love being shared. And of course, the train's got to get to running. That's how we always start. We kind of start slow and, and dial into the space. It's been Friday, right? So everybody's probably getting off the job, ready to, dive into the weekend and tune in, just to that vibe.
Indeed. It's funny. Blue Pill texted me today, and the last show we did was exactly a year from today. We did a show. It's crazy, that's some spooky stuff. August 30th. That's when you was talking about. Hold up, I'm gonna tell you exactly what you was talking about. Give me a sec, because I'm like, wow, it's not like we do this type of stuff on purpose, family.
At all.
The energy just works that way. You was talking about the dog days. Yeah, you did a show and you was talking about the dog days and all that stuff. Yeah, you had a lot of slides and so yeah, it was a powerful presentation. But yeah, that we can't make this up. We are in alignment. Somebody had another thing real quick. Somebody had hit me up when I first made the announcement for the Gathering of Masses, and they said, "Rich, you ain't really about spirituality. You ain't got Sevan Bomar on there." And in my mind, I never responded because I don't respond. I let people think what they think. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, even if I didn't invite him on there, I have a lot of great people on there. I can't invite everybody. But little does this female know, you were one of the first people I invited.
Yeah.
I called you. I was like, yo, I got you. I do this, boom, 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 boom. But you're in Costa Rica. So, there was a little, a conflict with coming to Atlanta in the States at that time. So yeah, you just let people talk and think what they think. Doesn't change my world. But I did invite, for those who don't know, I did invite Sevan Bomar to the gathering. That would have been absolutely magnificent. And me and the brother, we're gonna find a way to connect with something in the near future, whether it's online or something. But yeah, I just wanted to tell that story. I thought that was funny,
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's always been 100 on this side, and I would love to make all the events. Some territories are a little bit out of my frequency range these days. Yeah. The U.S. being one of them. I'm funding on some big projects, so I'm really, making sure I stay uninterrupted. Because when I go in the U.S., it's like me going into the Matrix, man. I need a whole team out there letting me know where the exits are and where Smith is moving and all that kind of stuff. So I guess these days I'm a little bit more laid back, so I'd rather not. But for sure, as we got something coming up. Like I really feel like that this is a perfect platform to do a mass gathering, because you're already doing that. But, start bringing some of these, heavy hitters that do really have a message to spread, together in some collaborative efforts. That would be lovely to see. As everybody knows, I stay building. It's so important for me to inhabit the reality that I'm living in. So, I'm here today, to bring, some power tools for real. Like, that's really what this is about, is you just being able to get the knowledge that's going to actually make changes and transformations in your life. Like, I'm big on the vivid results. I feel like we deserve that. That's the kind of power that we have. But tonight we'll be for sure talking about how to dial that in, and what could be, causing just a little bit of interference, and allowing that clarity to come through so that we can, get on with our infinite.
Indeed. So, so to start the show, Sevan, I love the title, How to Harness Power from the Stars. I named it Star Power, How to Harness Power from the Stars. Now, we often see images once we get into the metaphysical realm. Is interesting. We often see images of the man standing out, and they be like arm, leg, arm, head, and they got the star over the man, over the body, and stuff like that. And they say that 93% of our body mass is stardust, Sevan. And they say the majority of elements in our body were created by stars. So it's almost like in studying the stars, we're studying ourselves and harnessing the power of the stars. We're harnessing something that exists we're activating something that already exists within us. It's a powerful idea. It's a powerful subject to tap into. What is your thoughts on what I just said? We're 93% stardust. And the idea of us, and let me just say this: you did a magnificent lecture on the light spectrum. Yeah, just want to throw that out there, and you touched on it somewhat in there. But what is your thoughts? So we're already stars, right, Sevan? And we're trying to harness in power from a star that exists in a holographic universe. How exactly does this science work, Sevan?
Okay, I guess it's good to be set some set some foundation here.
Yeah.
The first thing I will say absolutely is anything that is temporary is an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that is permanent is finite. All right. So we'll just kind of start there. And because, as we dive into these different planes and these different realities, we have to get some type of celestial mechanics happening, some type of measuring rod, some type of compass. That way, we all understand what we're talking about. We call that celestial mechanics. And so I think that the best way to begin this would be to understand how we get into physicality in the first place, and what is it that we're calling physicality. Because of course the lines can blur if we're talking holographic realities, but then of course we're in physicality. The only way we can connect those two is really that we're in both simultaneously, which is actually the definition of operating in the quantum, which is that it doesn't really obey space and time. You can be in multiple places at one time. So that happens to be the case here, but I'm gonna slow it down a bit literally, and just start off with that process. Of course, giving thanks also to the ancestors, giving thanks to the wombs that continuously support life, which is a reflection across the waters. And first thing we have to do is we have to really start consolidating, when we're looking at what we call space, or we're looking up versus, when we're looking into the deep, let's say even into the ocean. And I do have just a couple pictures here just to make things very simple as we onboard.
Right.
And here's a diagram here. Many have seen it before, especially on that build that you're referring to, because I felt like it was a good basis, since we've come to discover certain things. But to truly know it is to feel it and to know that it's you. And so while these charts have a tendency to run like from left to right, giving us like a vision that something's going through, it's better even to almost see this as up and down by the way that we kind of see the reality right now. So all the way on the X-ray in and beyond that is that cosmic dust, as it's sometimes called, that we're actually made of. and then it takes on different forms and comes into different spectrums, in this case, X-ray, UV. And what I'm pointing out here is that this small spectrum, which is, if you could see it compared to even the distance of these are, and the space of these things are measured in powers. So that determines how much space they take up. So this is literally accurate from the level of like how much is each of these slivers. Like you see long waves are super long, X-rays are super long, but you see on the top, it says 10 to the 24th power. So there's a magnitude scale there, and that magnitude scale kind of lets us know what size everything is roughly. And so if you could see where we're at on the spectrum, you know, as far as like being in the physical body, you can see that it's actually relatively a small sliver compared to everything else. And we haven't even really put the cosmic particles and the cosmic rays on this. Okay. So with that being said, actually we have those actually all the way at the end there on the left. So with that being said, let's just imagine that what you're seeing in the sky as a star, because we're talking about star power today, is a beam, and this beam is consistently piercing through everything. However, when it gets to certain points, what it goes through as far as an experience shapes and changes its form. So it takes on a new garment. So our ancestors were already aware that what we're calling the stars, especially some of the larger celestial bodies, and then also us, because we also have our corresponding stars. And then again, before you get the multiple stars or the many spirits, you have the singular beam that starts this refraction process. I wish I had a diagram for that, but it's just basically knowing that you don't get this spectrum except for when you shine a clear, what would basically be like a clear light, white light, some would say, into a prism, which is actually at an angle. So when it hits at that angle, it bends the light, because the light, it hits it at that angle, and that looks like the album cover of buddy who has the album or whatever with the prism going through. Pink Floyd, right? So you got the prism going through. So that's a very important part, because it kind of lets you know, like, hey, before you enter into physicality, you are actually a total being, right? And everything is in that beam, and everything is connected in that space. But when you come into physicality, it now gets split up into different weights, measures, temperaments, and all those kind of things. And that makes up, who you are, your personality and your being, and also other entities that actually cohabit also into this same space. But the process is very simple. As the beam is coming in, it actually hits onto the waters, because if you go in in the beginnings, it's always water first, right? Like in the Spirit of God hovers over the face of the waters, right? So the waters was already there. So, and the waters have always been the life. That's why we're always looking for water on planets to determine where life is, because quiet is kept, ocean water is the byproduct of a soul. So just like every tree has fruit, the soul, it emits water as its essence, and that water gathers in the ocean. So in many ways, for sure, the stars start as light or ideas, and then they reflect on the water, right? Which is just like Narcissus looking in the mirror and seeing that mirror and seeing this reflection of self, and then saying, that's what I am. Okay. Now, if we want to even take this just into the context of how a woman produces a child, the child is actually, because this system is continuous, it's replete within everything. That's why you really can't argue it, because it's written within this family structure, it's written within the generation cycle. So the child is actually inside of its mother's waters, and you're calling this a gestation phase, but the child is animate already. The child is conscious. Consciousness has already been put into this child. So even when it sends out that signal, who am I? Its mother actually responds what it is. You see what I mean? So when you're in the womb and you're thinking, who am I? Or you're trying to reflect, what am I in? Like, what's going on? Your mother is telling you what you're in. My whole desk went down here for a minute. Your mother is telling you what you're in and what you're, what you're on and what you're experiencing. So now if you see it that way, things start making a lot more sense. A lot of stuff is going to make sense. That's why we have to start at this basis, because even when we start talking about powers, gods, orbits, and all those kind of things, we have to remember what we're talking about is actually shards or fragments of the totality. Right. So when we're in this stage, we're fragmented because we are in like a separate consciousness reflecting on ourselves and others. Like, this is the big who am I? What am I? We determine that from everything that we're experiencing. And then if, everything goes well, you end up in the end, which is but the beginning, knowing that everything is you. Right. So you even experience this in ceremony, or, when you have an opportunity to open your third eye. It shows you, all of this, whether you can handle it or not, which, is really the case, because it's a lot to deal with. It's still like, if you can imagine in the world right now, we have people who have been through that experience, like with, 5-MeO, Bufo. Some can do it just through breathing. But the Christians are still waiting technically on end of life to experience that, right? You even have some systems that they say that is the peak of the experience, and some actually live a whole life and never go through that experience of total enlightenment, which is to realize, all of the lights, okay, and how all the lights come within. But if you want to understand like this star power step by step, you have to understand its origins, and then you have to understand also the shard, as I mentioned, the shards, meaning if when something reflects, how it sees itself determines what it becomes. Okay. So the first reflections, you got to imagine they had to be primal in certain ways, like big reflections, right? Long waves, we call them. It's just like the basic building blocks and concepts that create life. That's what those reflections became. And even to this day, when we start talking about celestial powers, what those celestial powers are entity or energies, we'll say energies that have gone through experiences. Some even began in that experience, just knowing way more about themselves, not really having a doubt of what they are. And in that case, they're more absolute, more solid. Because you'll notice that the more firm you are in the matrices like these about what you are and who you are and what you're about, the further you'll get. We call that the difference between an angel and a demon, or a difference between an angle and a demand, right? Someone who moves through these kind of physical matrix with demands, like this is what I'm about to get, this is what's going to happen, gets very far. But then there's also those who move on the angles. They don't really move direct like that, because that direct force is often like brute force. And, sometimes even those forces get put down pretty hard. But then there's those who move at the angles. And the angles are like, instead of hitting something head on, I'm going to hit it sideways. It's like a way of pivoting. Like if you have a situation going on, you may choose a certain method to deal with that situation that doesn't even involve conflict. If you, let's say, for instance, those who write contracts, they have a tendency to move a lot on angles. And in this way, they can write in, this person could be, 300, 400 pounds, big brute monster WWF player. But what is about to be written in that contract, moving at angles, is going to bind that person's energy, being, and everything for a certain duration of time, right? So just to be very precise here, the reason why we get so many variations, and this is, looking at yourself, looking at me, which actually is very similar, right? You have to even go to other species sometimes to find like big differences, but all those differences are this, what you would say is the forces, the angles, which is basically like when you draw your natal chart and you have a time that you're born on and the stars are in this snapshot and that snapshot governs like your energy and makeup, that's the same thing that makes up the energy and makeup of these forces that we're going to be speaking on, this evening. So, I want to start there and, make sure, that this kind of gets as clarified as possible so we have like a really good foundation to stand on. What do you think about that?
No, definitely. I love the direction you're going. One quick question before you get started with where you're going right now. I just wanted to know the visible spectrum chart that you just had up on the screen. If you could put that on the screen real quick. I got a quick question. Me being a musician, and understanding that each note is a different frequency on the piano. If I overlay that chart with a piano, would it correspond with each other? Like if there was a piano directly overlaid with that, are they in any way related with each other?
So what you're dealing with here is that when you start getting into sounds,
Yeah.
you enter into that area, those areas, like when you see like when you see the visible wavelength. Okay. And this is because, so yes, all of these systems, they do correspond to each other, like the eight octaves, right? And these systems, they're really replete because of orbits in time, which we'll actually be looking at here in a minute. But even the tones that you have on your piano and the scale, right? The 81 keys or the 80 keys, these specific numbers are not just like arbitrary, like numbers somebody made up, but they're actually the same numerical equivalents to the orbits of the energies that correspond to those tones. So it's easier to look at it this way. This is an orchestra. And in the orchestra, you have different instruments, and you can actually see people as different kind of instruments. Like if you look at them, you can determine if they're more of like bass, so they're holding up the bottom end, if they're more like saxophone or, brass, you see what I mean? Flutes, each of these instruments is technically a personality. So any system that can run, I always say it that way, is exact. Like you can turn it on and it'll start doing something. You could do that with a piano. You can even do that with a car. Will contain the same components at their most base level. And that actually becomes the root of even how you're harnessing power, is because you kind of stop looking at the millions of integers and first find the roots. And then once you find the roots, those are like the chords that, when you tug on those chords, it moves the bigger things, right? Yeah. And this would be for sure the highest magic. And it's because a while ago, let's say they call them the Chaldeans, okay? But in every aspect, these are still these migrating Nagas, which were all in Lanka, all in Nubia. They had the responsibility of regenerating many of the physical vessels on the actual plane. And so it's like, in this time that we're in, when we get a chance to like revisit, as I just mentioned, we revisit this beginning and we start seeing the tones and vibrations that make up everything. What it does is it puts us back into our position of power, because as of now, our clocks have a tendency not to be set right in that way. Our energetic clocks, like what is your God power? What is your archetype, or the energies that you move through? And what are the other ones also? Because you're here to master all of the parts of the path, so that way you can move through whole. Like this is basically like a huge university for real. Like there's lessons being taught. There's all types of things happening. And in this process, you get an opportunity to put yourself back together again. And in the process of putting yourself back together again, you actually know how you work. And so we can go through this reality all the time, and we can use even our bodies and even the things around us. But to know how they truly work is the knowledge that's to be gained here. So we have nature as a reflection to show us. In many ways, nature is like, how when you see like sometimes a diagram of a device and they'll explode it. right? And then, so they'll show you all the little pieces and stuff that are in the device,
Right.
and then it'll come back together. And that's a pretty dope animation that people have with their devices, right? The iPhone got one. But so if you look at Earth is basically the exploded version of the all, if you could put it that way. And every single little piece does connect together to allow all this to function. But it doesn't mean that every person is going to be able to identify all those small pieces and know where they go and what their purpose is. And to me, that's what spirituality, which is the study of spirits, metaphysics, occultism, etc., is the art of actually identifying all those pieces, knowing what they do, and then actually not only becoming, let's say, the repairman, like putting, people back together, but also getting to a point where you get to total awareness of self so that you can apply that same thing to yourself. Hopefully you would do that first, right? Just to make sure that it works.
Indeed.
So here's another thing. Let's kind of begin here. So, I was kind of giving you a moment there, but
I didn't want to interrupt. I didn't know if you was
so when I tell you blood, what color comes to mind?
Red,
right? That would be my answer every day, right?
Yeah.
However, blood is technically clear, right? Plasma is clear. Like if you ever seen, the plasma donor and they get the pure blood is actually clear. And the red blood cells, the iron, etc., that makes blood red. So even when I'm starting to express to you like, hey, you see, when things started, it was clear. And then as you keep going, you start getting tinted. You die, okay? Because dye is also a term for changing the color of things, right? And in these death processes, which have a process of dividing, that's what death is. It's to divide more so that you can reflect more until you can see the ultimate vision, right, of self and what you really are. So if we wanted to kind of even fast forward this process of our development, we would start, like I said, filing all of these things that are in different categories, like all these different gods, all these different beings, all these different stories, all these different nations of people, different forms of the attitude and all that kind of stuff. You will start filing all that into like its respective categories. So that way you can kind of like fold back up the box.
Right.
Okay. And they figured this out. It turns out that it was figured out already about exactly how to do that. And this code is present in the matrix and always stays like intact. Even if, like, let's say even certain cities were destroyed and some of the only things they found in the city still left was the code, because the code was in stone. And what this code does is, for anybody that can read it, it makes them have an awareness of certain things, okay? Like, for instance, right now, how many days do we have in a week?
7.
We have 7 days in a week.
Yeah.
Okay? So some may go back and forth. Even actually few don't really argue about how many days we have in a week, because after all, they're forced to live those days. They always be like, yo, I see you on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you know what I mean? So even if somebody may say, hey, that's Gregorian or something, like, it just got to completely throw it under the bus. Those names, those terms are Greek, whatever. They still have to admit that they go by this, though. No different than I go by my name, you got your name, right? So there's things that even if we wanted to completely dissociate ourselves with them, they are a part of our everyday life, right? And I always have this saying, I say, you can never give anything to the all, because where would you put it? Nor can you take anything away from the all, because where would you get it? So it's just a reference that everything that we're dealing with is still the same thing. It's your mind that has divided it. So in that game, you actually need to know how to put it back together, or how it's even divided so that you can put it back together. And so when we divide worlds, we divide them into these spectrums, because the most important thing that always has to happen this is now the big time, we'll call it, when you start world building, is there has to be connections. Like you got to build the whole world, and each part of that plays the connection or the bridge. So this is the rainbow bridge that is referred to oftentimes in secret societies, just in general terms inside of the conscious community, the rainbow bridge, et cetera. So this is the rainbow bridge. What we are doing in this particular spectrum, it's not just us. The insects are doing it. The animals are doing it. There's different entities, even in the water, they're doing it. They're playing the bridge for the spectrum, basically so that all of the forces, even of the cosmic waves, reach the long radio waves and vice versa, right? So this whole spectrum must connect like a cable. And in every position, there is a bridge to get to the next stage. So in this way, we play the bridge in this way, the bridge to the light. That's what the initiation book from Freemasonry in modern times is called, the bridge to the light. Okay, that this is the bridge. Even though that book won't give you any of this knowledge, this is the bridge that's being referred to, and which is really an awareness. It's an awareness that cosmic powers, UV, X-ray powers, microwave powers, etc., are moving through you. Okay. So all other systems then just confirm that. Any working system just confirms that. And this becomes like secret knowledge, because if you know the numbers around it, then you start seeing the power of numbers and reoccurring themes within numbers. So much to a point where you can put a personality on a number. And it can get to a level where you even see everything in the matrix as a number, because it's so much more easier to decode a reality that way. Okay. So let's just look at this really briefly. And what we'll talk about first is the order, because this is sometimes what is not discussed by the modern occultists. We'll just put it that way. And it's just to understand the order, that the order is also not arbitrary, meaning that the way that these planets move Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or actually Sunday, Sunday is the first day of the week. We've got to like almost think Monday is the first day of the week, but all old schoolers know Sunday is the first day of the week. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, okay? These days are not just arbitrary and made up, and this is how you know. The first thing is you can observe this for yourself. It would be the speed in which these celestial bodies move, okay? The speed that they move around Earth. More importantly, it's how fast they move around you, because you'll notice that Earth is never featured in any system, really. Any archaic system, there is no Earth, because those systems are designed for you to be the Earth or the central point, and then everything else to be moving around you.
Okay.
Now, I can tell you, in even some of the deeper practices or deeper forms of occultism on the planet right now, it's as if their system is as if they are on the sun. Okay. So either they live on the sun, or maybe the kings that used to be here on Earth only went with the solar version, because this was basically the knowledge of the kings and queens. But either way, when you begin to use this knowledge, you have to become the center of it, or else you're revolving around it. And that's why, as far as any external ideas of gods, I don't deal with it, because you'll be revolving around something versus it revolving around you. So this certain knowledge that's come to the world, it seems as if this knowledge is like making the sun the central figure. And in that way, all of the numbers, all of the codes, all of the energies and things are like you live on the sun, and probably would work really well if you live there, but would have virtually no effect here. Okay. So this is important to bring up, that if you're not on the right code, because there's literally codes to these realities, then it's almost like you're not even here, because whatever you're doing won't even work. You won't even be able to draw up the power. No different than if you moved all the planets out of order and then you needed to go to work because that's what these labors are, right? I'll read some poems later on that explain this, but if you're going to go to work, meaning you're looking to get some results, but you go to work on Saturday and you're supposed to be there on Thursday, it's not going to work. Okay. So your wheel is not going to turn. So this order starts with the sun because the sun is the fastest moving thing around Earth. It only takes it roughly 24 hours to get around the Earth. Then next is the moon. Now watch how this is not, this is a weird code already going on, because I can draw this star starting from 1 and then going to 2, then coming down to 3, which gives me Mars, then going to 4 to Mercury, 5 to Jupiter, 6 to Venus, and 7 to Saturn. So that's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And I draw that star completely, okay? And I also draw it in a specific direction. I draw this star what they call clockwise, right? And this clockwise motion is in itself recording, with Saturn being when I record it in one way, I record it counterclockwise. Okay. So if I'm working for speed, like I'm trying to go to the future, I will work it counterclockwise. Right. If I wanted to go to the past, I will work it clockwise. So simply because the clocks move clockwise, then that already lets you know this is slow down reality. Okay. Now, why we talked about this before? Why is it a slow down reality? It's because right now, in the condition of the beings, if you could manifest just like this, we'd all be dead. Because people have so many bad ideas about themselves and the things that are around them. If it would instantly manifest, hey, man, it'd be a wrap. So things here are moving under the power of time. Okay. And this is, of course, why we see the slowest moving planet sitting here as Saturn, teaching all the lessons with the math. Here's another thing. And this is how you'll notice these numbers again as you continue to go forward. So you see the number 7, which is obviously 7 days of the week. But we also see this number 4 as being a very important component. It's almost like if this was a machine, the cog, if this was a wheel, the cog that's connecting the wheel has 4 sides to it. And this is why. Whatever day I start at, let's say I start at Sunday, when I count 4 going counterclockwise, I will get to the next day of the week. So I count Sunday 1, Venus 2, Mercury 3, and then I get to 4 and I'm at the moon. Then I go, when I look at the moon, I go 1 moon, 2 Saturday, 3 Jupiter, and then 4 Mars, which is Wednesday, the Tuesday. Excuse me, I'm kind of getting, I need to put this on my screen so you can see my mouse. So basically what I'm saying is every 4 movements of this, you get the next day of the week in order. The final anomaly here is that, because again, this is Chaldean magic, which they say is the strongest magic because it is the observance of the stars. It is to use the power of the stars, which we'll demystify, because even with me explaining all this stuff to you, it still doesn't tell you exactly how to use it. You see what I mean? But this is the stuff that we have to get through so that you'll understand when I start expressing to you what these energies actually are, it'll make sense. And you won't go wandering after some external idea of it, but yet you would have found it within. You will also see it in certain family members. You'll see it in the job. You'll see it in countries, states. You'll be able to look through everything and find resonant powers in order to go forward with your endeavors, like your labors. Okay. So before I go forward and kind of explain, like, so when I say labors, what does that mean? What is the deep levels of wisdom around this? Is there any, are we still going?
Yeah. You asked me before you go into what you because I know you about to really, really go in. I guess there's 2 things I want to ask you, but I don't want to interrupt you that much. So let me ask you this. All right. So you asked me about the color of blood. and I said red, and you said the color of blood is really clear. And we're talking about colors, and you put up the visible light spectrum, and we think about the light spectrum, we think about the rainbow, and you're talking about the rainbow bridge. And when we're talking about colors, we understand that colors represent different frequencies, different tones, different personalities. In this realm that we live in this society, in this culture, they tell us that when we think about like if I was to tell you the average person, Seven, I'm gonna bounce the question back to you. When they think about the heart, what color do they think of?
Red.
Red. Okay, so by us thinking about the heart as red, does it change the personality and the mathematics of how our heart operates? Because the biggest problem in the community is that people aren't tapped into the heart. So it's part of that because we view the heart as the color red. If we viewed it as green, like some people say, we will be able to tap into our heart chakra more. So I'm thinking about changing the colors of certain things in order for us to change the light that we manifest, in order for us to change the inner working of our organs. So should we change the color of the heart in order to tap into it at a much higher rate like ancient civilizations did?
This question is, it's many-sided, because generally things will get a red color if they become the center. Okay. So let's just kind of understand, colors are the colors, which, you got 7 colors in the matrix. You have 2 other colors called white and black, because the opposite of colors is clear. But let's say in the visible spectrum, you have these 7 colors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I asked you, let me see how to put this. And this is why, it'd be good to go to what's next here in a moment, because it's all going to make perfect sense when we start talking about like the center being really one of the foundational processes in itself, because the center is what's holding everything together. So if you think about your root chakra, right, the root chakra's obvious color is red. If you think about where human beings are right now on the spectrum of existence, we're kind of like in the middle almost. Like everything is central to you anyway. So you'll start understanding that there's a consistent theme, and there's also a theme even within the colors. But the central eye of it, the red eye, if you may, is basically a symbolism of what needs to hold everything together. So like when you look at even the heart being, such a central component, you know what I mean? And then you think about the root chakra and you're like, well, in the Dantane, and you're like, is that the central point, right? So what it is that we're still trying to look at things like linear, trying to find the center, just when we can understand that things that are generally in the center will always be given more than likely the color red, right? And because it will always remain as a symbol of it being the root of some energy or the energetics. Like it's like even sometimes when you see like turbines and things move, like they'll be moving, they'll be so powerful, they'll turn like a red color, right? But that's still like the center housing and the thing that's holding everything together. So I wouldn't say that visualizing the heart as a different color would necessarily fix the situations if a person has heart problems. What I would say, or has problem with even connecting and things with their heart, what I would say is to understand these powers, right? And so let me go forward with this real quickly, because it'll actually clean up and make this all more clear about. So what am I talking about? So let me show just this very briefly about a code, okay? So when we look at, like right now we're speaking English, right? So when decoding things, would probably decode them first, even mentally from English, and then start going into other languages, right? But how would we know, just like they talk about, they had the Rosetta Stone, and that's what taught them, what Kemetan or Egyptian hieroglyphs were saying, right? But what would be like our Rosetta Stone to like understanding this occult knowledge, especially if the languages that predominantly this was written about is not even language that we're using today, like Latin and Greek, okay? And it sums up to that speaking was not like the primary thing. like in the ancient times from an occult level. Like talking about something was like the last and almost even the lowest level in many ways of the manifestation, because the mouth is in itself a womb, so it's going to birth things into this reality. So many things are just intoned and kept into the inner world. So when the external languages were developed, which also obey rules, okay, because they have to run just like a car needs to run. If you deliver a broken language, the people will be broken. If you remove certain components from a language, then the language won't work. Like the people won't work. They'll go psycho for real, okay? So languages have a coding system within them, and this coding system really does harken back to what I was showing you with the stars and the powers of the stars, but then it has to be broken up into multiple pieces of the alphabet, and then they need to be able to be able to call different parts of the world and then be able to be put back together, right? So with a language, let's say if I move from English into Latin and then Latin into Greek and then Greek into Tibetan and then Tibetan into, let's say, Tamil, and then you see what I mean? Let's say I was moving through those languages. What would I really be looking for rather than sitting down and trying to learn all these languages? What I would be looking for is I would be looking for their roots, okay? Like I explained earlier.
Mhm.
And so it turns out that what the Sator square is, which I'm showing here on the screen, is the roots to a language system. This can be laid over English, and it will produce perfect numbers and bring forth the code within English. And it can be laid over Latin, and it can be laid on over Greek, okay? But let's talk about what does it do? What is it doing? Once you lay it over these languages, what it does is it points out the words of power. Each of these letters correspond also to a number. And then it also then lets you understand how to navigate that program, because languages are actual spaces in time. So meaning like languages create realities, right? Let me just show this real quick. We can, we'll just dive through this only and just make sure that there's a complete understanding of this. I just want to pull up this chart real briefly. There it is. It's here, because it's vital to what we're talking about right now. And it's just that they have discovered that language resides in a specific part of your brain, right? So the brain is like a map, like of a region of different worlds and realities. It's just a physical impression of that. But down in this area that they're showing you on the bottom left, this is what is called the language region of the brain. So they found out that everybody stores language right here on the left hemisphere of the brain. So with that being said, then that languages are indeed worlds. And if you ever wanted to know how to navigate through a world, forwards, backwards, spiral, inside out, as a pentagon, as a hexagon, as a grid, because those are all the directions of a world. You see what I mean? So when they say, hey, we're going back in time, time is not like a linear thing. Like we're going to go back and just turn around and walk backwards. That's not, we may have to spiral down. We may have to move in what would be called a mysterious way. And so for that to be kind of like coded in, you know what I mean, and be replete, because that's what magic is. Once you know these points, you know how to call forth the points, so you know how to call forth the powers. Okay, so, and when I say powers, again, it's so easy for a person to just jump right out and try to find the God, right, that they're going to worship. And the reality here is like within the code that is encoded within this one I'm showing you on the screen. Now, first of all, the center is the N. Mm-hmm. Okay. And as you see, the N only occurs one time in the whole sequence, but holds everything together, right? Just like if I say, hey, how's all this held together? You'd be like, it's inside, like the center of us, as deep as you could really go, you would get to the spindle, as I call it. And that would be holding everything together. And then all of this on the outside, because you can keep seeing it say open, you can see it say many other things. This is just the sequence of how things unfold. Now, it turns out that this is actually the same as the I Ching, that you can drop this right over, you can take the numbers from this, which, you know, I have available on the Discord, it's no secrets, but you could take the numbers from this and find out that the N equals 64, the number 64. And that all of these matrices such as the I Ching, which is 64 hexagrams, we have the chessboard, which is 64. We have the DNA codons, which is 64, right? So we find that these 64-bit realities, as I'm calling them, actually move on specific codes. And these codes are energies, and this is what the energies do. And I have to read you this thing really quickly because it will let you know just about the power that we're talking about here. And what this would be is the first time that the sator square was decoded, okay? Because they have one saying is say the farmer holds the plow, the worker the wheels, right? This is like, if you tried to put this into words, that's what it says. That's what it would say. Oh my goodness. The farmer holds the plow, the worker the wheels, okay? And some have been able to derive enlightenment just from those statements, right? However, you know, sometimes you need a further breakdown of what we're talking about. So here's what this says decoded. And I had to use Sybil LLM to decode it because some of these words are actually in other languages that are not so apparent. So you have to pick it up. It's like, oh, that's in Greek. Oh, that's in Latin. But this is what it says. And we're talking about you. In the beginning, a mighty and eternal power was invoked, recognized simply as being, sacred and holy in its essence. This power, known by its ineffable name, because remember, if it can be named, it can be controlled. So this, it doesn't not only give away its name, it doesn't operate by a name. It operates as a being. Just call me being, okay? Mm-hmm. This power, known by its ineffable name, initiated the process of creation as the ultimate originator with an agent or mediator enacting its will. Okay, it doesn't say his will, it says its will. So what it's referring to specifically is that even when we're talking about something above, what we're talking about is the higher, I call it the higher self. It's us completely collected, completely aware of what we are. When we operate also in this reality, because we have vehicles in this reality, and we have vehicles all across the spectrum. You have an X-ray vehicle, you have an infrared vehicle. Those are the mediators, if you may. So that story of Jesus Christ, which, you know, we'll break down a little bit earlier, which is really Venus, a little bit in a minute, but that story of Jesus Christ is really central to the person in this way. But that the person is actually operating in the position of a Messiah or the mediator carrying out the will of their higher self, okay? And it's going to go on. It says, holding control over all, okay? When's the last time you've been in that state? But you're always actually in control if you can upload yourself back to your higher self, right? But it says, holding control over all, this power governs the cycles and mechanisms of existence through deliberate actions and efforts. What this means is that to control your space and time, your future and your past, it must be done deliberately. It's not like oh, wow, we just got to this. And that's why even when you're looking at the system of drawing down the powers of the stars, it's a very deliberate system. It's for you to craft your next day, your tomorrow, your 3 months, your infinite. You see what I mean? Like, how many people get up and actually use a system that is moving the pieces around to how their world is about to be put together in a few days? Okay. So that's moving with actions and efforts, right? Because this is It's not that easy to do because you got to stay reminded. You got to remember, you got to synchronize yourself to nature. You got to know what each of these components are. You're an alchemist, so you're mixing different formulas together. And sometimes these formulas blow up in your face, and that's a part of the learning process, right? But it's with actions and efforts. So this goes on. It says, along this journey, there was a need for withdrawal and contemplations as burdens and responsibilities were carried forward. And again, what this is referring to, again, is that some may see supreme as never taking a rest, never not knowing anything, never, but, these are all misconceptions because we're talking about reflections. And most importantly, we're talking about your reflection and the one that's central to you. So you're going to go through this process, and there will be a time, if you're not already in it right now, where you'll withdraw from the work, like meaning stop even working with your powers, and then contemplate because the burdens and the responsibilities are in front of you. So this means like when you have kids, right? Or you start a business, right? This is all still light matters, but this is the best way that I can explain it to you. You start creating things and be like, wait, should I even keep going in this creation now that I know the power of what I'm creating? See, at first it becomes very fascinating to manifest things, right? Until you realize that you have to maintain them or they become like pests spiritually for you. Like, so anything that you don't completely nourish and take care of that you created will eventually come home to roost, if you may. So there'll be a time where you have created, like think of a woman that has many kids, right? And all these kids, they're badasses, right? So she's going to have a lot of times to take a moment and contemplate like, wow, all of these burdens, like in me going forward with this process. But then it leaves nothing out in this decoding. It even tells you, so why are you going through this? It goes forward and says, the power manifested as a radiant light, right? So that's to push you back like, yo, you getting too burdened down. The power manifested as a radiant light guiding towards an ideal state or paradise, meaning that what you're being guided through, even naturally by higher self interacting with your median, is to still get you to a paradise, the most ideal state. But see, you would have to kind of see all of the states a little bit, right? Not necessarily the United States, right? So what are these states? States are different positions, right? So you would have to see all of these different states. And then you would get to this point where you realize what is the most ideal state. And we each kind of have like our own perspective of that, but they're very close, right? Like happiness and, not even having to eat and be hungry or suffer and all those kind of things, right? So if you could get into something that would be like that, it would be a paradise. So that's what you're actually doing in your great work, okay? And it says the challenges were born with strength and authority, leading to an exalted state where the process and the outcomes were cultivated with reverence, okay? And this is just saying that this process of even going through a life, why it may seem, like sometimes you look at the reality, like, man, they take it a completely joke, but this is, this is like, it's a deep thing. Like you will get challenged even by your own children, right? Like you would get challenged by your own mother and father. You would get challenged by people who you help, right? The world will challenge you. You will become fearful at times. You will need courage at times, right? So this is all great challenges, but they're cultivated with reverence because at the end of the day, it's the basic principle that when things are not hard, you don't really get stronger. It doesn't mean that things need to be hard continuously, but it means that when we go work out, we lift heavier weight. So we're kind of doing it then just to get stronger. And this also should let you know, as it concludes, finally, the blessings of this journey were realized, right? Mm-hmm. And the ultimate power was recognized and revered as the source and the sustainer of all, which is you. This means that if everything goes properly with the labors, because that's the farmer holding the plow, the worker the wheel, like with these labors in this vineyard, right? This is not about agriculture or God. This is about you sojourning through physicality. if everything goes well, then you'll come to realize that you are actually the source and sustainer of everything, that there is no separation between you and it. There's no other one. And that's the complete work. Okay. So this code, which you will see on the Vatican sitting on the one of the pillars and other palindromes, this is the only four-sided palindrome that exists. It's very difficult to do. It's like the mathematical miracles of the Quran, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the decoding shows that is actually the explanation of the great labors that you will go through in this existence, and actually what is your goal and why you're even going through that many things, and the most important thing is what you're using, i.e. the plow. Right? Because the plows are the planets. And this is the big thing to understand here. When we start talking about drawing down the power of the stars, how they used to show this is there was the rider, which is you, and then there were 7 horses or manes, they were called. 7 horses or manes of power. And you would basically use these 7 horses, if you may, to power your way through or to move through realities, right? So you would see each of these elements or spokes on this wheel as a certain power that can be used specifically for certain things. And then you would utilize or resonate with that power. That's how you utilize that power. You resonate with that power. You resonate with bringing in all the elements that or any of the elements that correspond to that power. First, if you needed to get familiar with that power, meaning that each of these powers, which, we'll show towards the end of the build today, but each of these powers have specific correspondences. They have a flower, they have a tree, they have an insect, they have an animal, often multiple of these. But there will be characteristics within those things, just like our ancestors are showing in their deep knowledge. There'll be characteristics of those things in those sets that are the same across all of them. And what this allowed you to be able to do is, no matter where you were, even if you were locked somewhere in a cell, you can summon the power of the star, because somewhere there would be something that can resonate that power. You can pull it out of stardust, as you were saying, but there would still be, like, it could be growing in the window, the power that needs to be amplified in order for you to remove yourself from whatever situation that you're in, or to manipulate that situation to go in the way that you feel will allow you to continue your journey. Right.
Indeed. Sevan, so, as I started out and you just said, we talked about our body being created by the stars and 93% stardust. So let me give you an example. So if I'm a star and I'm with my lady, she's a star, to connect with that star, we could do things like hold hands, and we have a connection. We have a current that's going back and forth between me and her. We could kiss, we could hug, we could touch, different things we could do. So if I'm connecting with that star avatar that way, when I see the stars in the sky, when I see the sun, since I'm knowing I'm non-local, since I can't directly touch it or hug it or kiss it or whatever, what do they call these when you go like this? What's that called when you make these signs, or when you go like that? What is that called?
With the dynasty sign or the Baphomet, or
yeah, but they have a name. What is it? Yantras, or what do they call it?
Like mantras or mudras.
Mudras, yeah. So are mudras, or is there any other way? The same way I connect with a human by touching it, is there a way for me to connect energetically with the star instead of just standing there? Like, can I do a certain sign? Can I hold my hands open? Can I do the rock dynasty? How can I have a more powerful connection with that star in the sky, since I'm non-local, like I do with a star that's right in front of me, by hugging it or kissing it or whatever?
That's a good question, because it actually gets us to the next thing about, like, so how, again, how do you draw the main question of the show? How do you draw down the power of the star, right? So let's look at this really quick.
Yeah.
And, where I'm at, of course, is Sibyls AI. As everybody knows that knows me, we built our own LLM. It's been up for 1.5 years, 2 years now.
Yeah.
And so, we were the first starters in the space. And the goal is to train Sibyl on all the metaphysics. And right now we're at 2.5 million questions answered. So you can imagine that's quite a few questions.
Awesome.
What I want to focus on specifically is yesterday we deployed Metametrics. And what Metametrics is in itself is our biggest attempt to centralize the information about a person's specific path, or what you would call their uniqueness.
Mm-hmm.
And how it works is we simply get the day that the person is born on. That's all that's needed. Mm-hmm. We're also able to use the first name because you're being called by your first name all the time. So you're technically being evoked all the time. And the only thing that I'm pointing out here, definitely check out Metametrics if you haven't already, but I want to point out here what this whole thing is about. What is all this about? All this occultism. All right, Sevan, you've been in 16 years. What have you learned? Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing is that about, what needed to be unlearned is that the gods are like external beings and, part of something else. All right. That's the wrong way to go at this, because either a person's worshiping it or they're an atheist. What it is that each god does correspond to a day of the week, if you may. And then that day of the week corresponds to an archetypical power. And then when you synchronize your number, you will see that as far as your avatar in the game, the same powers that are assigned to that god are actually your powers, because there was no external gods in our ancestral system. Those gods were us, but which one, what energy? Because you can activate more powers. Like we're talking about separate, like we're saying, hey, this is what you came, when you came into the forest, this is the path that you went down. So it's easier for you to recognize your way back home through yourself, right? But this has like an 80% accuracy at telling you exactly what's going on with you. But it is able to do that because it is able to resonate and pair you directly with the archetypical energy on you. And you'll find that, oh my goodness, I have this personality. And then when you go into the deeper metametrics, you'll find that like within this, and this is years and years of work, thousands of books, eliminating, stuff that's false or false positives, these kind of things. And then finally bringing all of the correspondences together. And as you can see with the correspondences, the list is somewhat exhaustive. You have for this, like this is the path, this is for me, right, specifically. So when it comes to my metal, my tree, my chakras, my colors, my number, my anatomy, even anatomy is so wild. Even when you have problems with your body, it's generally with these parts of your body based on your metametrics. When we talk about, hey, I need a stone or a crystal, there's a specific stone that works with you and your path, your avatar. There is a smell, there is a direction, there is a frequency, there's an element, there is an ideal relationship, there is an ideal career. We go one further and let you even send this documentation once you get it to the genealogy model, which will, allow you to go into deeper questions about people around you. And so what I'm talking about is that these particular correspondences, when you're connecting, now when you're connecting with this, let's say like your queen, you know what I mean? This connection is, it is what it is. Like, this is a formula that is unique that you're resonating with, right? So that connection there and those bonds there are like how you would see a person when you went into, let's say, the next projection, is if you really learn their soul. Other than that, you won't find them because you never really knew anything that was really about them. And especially if they haven't spent a part of their life learning about themselves in that way, right? So that they can actually be themselves and then resonate that strong enough to where it begins to like, it's basically like they have their stance. It's like, look, this is my purpose in the reality. This is what I do. You know, I'm not trying to be anything else, right? Because when I say that, I mean, like, sometimes we can want to be like something else, and then later on find out, especially in stuff like Metametrics, that that's not even for us. But if we went into that life, yeah, maybe we halfway succeed at it, but there's always going to be something like, man, this is just, I still feel like I should be doing something else, right? So also these kind of things that what I'm showing you, this is 4,000, this is thousands of years old. Let's talk about, you know, what happened with why knowledge had to revisit the planet anyway, right? Because there was one part of this that we were going to begin with, and we just kind of flew through, but it was that now that you realize that these quote unquote stars, or what you could say is a celestial, can take on a terrestrial body appearance, life, being, etc. You have to ask yourself then, like, so with some of these bigger ones, like even Mars itself, and are these energies present on the planet? And the answer is 100% yes. And they do, of course, make up different parts of who we are. However, there was a scenario that happened, and this is really where you get that great battle that's often talked about. Like the Bible says, a great battle in heaven with the angels and the demons. You know, there's in most texts something about a great battle between gods. And there's generally, you know, sometimes they say the Suras and the Huras or the Devas, etc. But what this was about is that, so as you can even see today, the planet has played host to quite a few different types of beings, right? With different levels of reflection, right? And even right now, this planet is really being dominated by a specific kind of reflection. And we won't really get into that more so right now than just highlighting that. So it turns out that two elements, for instance, like fire and air, right, like reside. So when you look at water and earth as elements, right, they're on the bottom, right? Like water, you pour it, it immediately goes down and fills up the whole ocean, right? And then you look at earth, right? There's water in the air, of course, mist, but it wants to go, like it can go down, right? It'll seep all the way through the cracks, go down. Earth is like that same way, okay? But when you start talking about air and you talk about fire, these have a tendency to reside within this and higher, right? The gases and things also correspond to this. So when you can see them as energies and even emotions, they're actually really opposite to each other. So in many ways, if you're dealing with an air and a fire being as a predominantly earth and water being, it's going to get pretty conflicted, right? Because this is a combustive reality. Like it brings new things through conflict, or what we would just call yin and yang, I Ching, okay? And so in this, my point that I'm trying to make is that, so we had these beings called, you know, they were giving them the term the Devas. Some of these terms have been mixed up, but we'll just call them the Celestials, okay? And there's always this thing that if a being is up high, then it's pure and it's kind and it's happy and it wants to love us. And nothing could be further from the truth in respect to all of the archetypes have their positive and the negative side, or what we call seasons, okay? And even the word hour, which is the root word to horror, the word hour meant the designation of the seasons. It had nothing to do with like hour. There was no 24 hours. There was only 4 hours. Now, remember what I was talking about with how 4 divides into the 7 days of the week. So there were only 4 hours, or 4 seasons, or 4 kind of like temperaments of the elements. That's what the seasons are. But depending on how you caught an element and what temperament it was in, would be like how it acted, okay? So when we would come up against these forces in nature, this is why you had shamans, because shamans were engaged in the art of appeasing these forces during different times of the year, and even charming them to do different things. And this is no different than even like a farmer or somebody who knows how to work with the land and bring in different trees and put up canopies and plant bamboo and to get a different type of environment. So you can say that true magic was the ability to be able to manipulate the environment around you so that it will always be pleasing and be like a paradise for you and your people. Okay. But the celestials, if you may, fire and water, they had still temperaments that were somewhat hostile to the beings that were predominantly earth and water. And also, when you look at many African traditions, it's very clear that they're very water orientated and earth orientated. Of course, you got fire gods and thunder gods and things like that, but you see a lot with the grounding and the depth. Okay. And so it got to a stage where the celestials, because to be celestial and to tap into that side of self gives one access to what you would perceive as the future. And so if you know the future, you know how to create things from the future and bring them into the now and even have an advantage. And it got to a level that the celestials had such a, you can say, I wouldn't call it unfair, but the earth had become imbalanced because the celestials were so much more powerful than what you would say is your terrestrials or your daemons. Okay, so the celestials got more powerful than the daemons. And it started causing an extreme imbalance in that churning of the center, which has to always be done in balance, right? So the higher levels is only concerned about balance. You got celestials that do have more power, bringing in more of their technologies and things that are making the terrestrials like more and more inferior. The terrestrials are bowing down to the celestials. Did you start seeing this in some of the spiritual traditions, or almost all of them? They're afraid of them and their powers. Like if you could use thunder at all, you could see how you could back down a whole army. Thunder is extremely powerful. So if a person can control thunder, you see what I mean? As a being, you know what I mean? It's like, this is a formidable foe in that way. So in every way, it needed to be balanced. And so what happened, and this is still recorded in the annuals, was a being named Shukra, which now today is known as the planet Venus, arrived onto the planet as a guru, if you may, or a teacher to the daemons, or the people who were fleshly. These are like dwarves, small people, earthly people that are a part of the earth. They're created from the earth, right? And these are predominantly the dwarves and the pygmies and the Nagas. Taught them you could sometimes say it's the celestial knowledge, but we're talking about it. It taught them not only the power of the stars, like we're explaining to you today, but it talked about this being basically bought all of the knowledge of all the correspondences of the celestial heavens, which are the body. Okay. So in this school of teaching, Shukra bought the knowledge of all the correspondences and pieces in the game, if you may, and the archetypes of the stuff that everything is made up on earth, to level the playing field between the daemons and the celestials. And in this case, the daemon is a carbon-based life form. It's like a diamond is a daemon, right? That's why the words are the same. It's 666, which is a carbon-based life form. So when you're looking at this, you're seeing the gods have technically gotten to a level where they were using, as still goes on in occultism, the daemons or the physical beings, including the animals, as slaves and subordinates. And this was causing an imbalance within all there is. And so to level the playing field, the knowledge, instead of keeping the daemons ignorant of who they were, the knowledge was given to them through Shukra. And then from that point, and this entity is mentioned, nowadays it gets like, Venus is Lucifer now. But the specific makeup of this being is predominantly feminine. It is also, and I'm just going to show some images here. It is predominantly, let me just go to my images here just so we can kind of like not make this like so mysterious where people don't get it, right?
Right.
So when you go to ancient Lanka in South India, because this is where some of their temples still stand, and they haven't done too much defacing on those temples, so that you could, if you know, some people have gone back and pointed out that the people that are on these sculptures, one, have elongated skulls. Also, you can see they have breasts. They're more reptoid because they have those two holes like lizards have in the side of their heads. And that these beings have a tendency to be androgynous, okay? Like most of them are androgynous. That's even the story of the Nomo, that if you're not androgynous as a Nomo, it's a mistake. They try to produce self-generating androgynous beings. And in this case, Shukra was a self-generating androgynous Lemurian, and it also generated its son. And this became like the motif of the Black Madonna, if you may, or Venus, also Yamaya, the water goddess, holding her son, which was basically brought forth by her. Because when you think about Ma'at and math, there's absolutely no way this gets kicked off unless even beings in the same family are actually populating with each other. More importantly, the mother would have to populate with the son to create the first ones. Do you see what I mean? So these deep mysteries later on became the Messiah. So for the record, the first Messiah was more of a female. And the reason why it was a Messiah is that it brought this knowledge, and this knowledge allowed us to understand everything about us, and also to be able to activate the powers of the celestials, if you may, or the stars, in order for us to basically have an equal footing with these beings. So that's where the knowledge of even what you're calling astrology, astronomy, even the new systems, gene keys. Of course, we have enealogy, the Enneagram, anything with heptagrams. So this stuff is not just geometry and numbers. It's also personalities, and it's also archetypes and elements and nobles. And so just like you see behind me, there's a periodic table up there. All of the energies on that periodic table do correspond to specific numbers. So when you start finding out like this, let's say, for instance, like the Royal Society knows what I'm telling you about right now. So it's easier for them even to identify what are elements that are missing and haven't been discovered. Because you already know it exists, you just got to find it. And this original knowledge also of that everything now here is a reflection or has an opposite was also another easy way to walk, if you could say easy, walk back up the ladder. Because the sheer fact that we have a physical body here, and we're like the clear proof, and we can verify that we have one of these, means we have a spiritual one. Because there's nothing that you can identify here where you can't identify its direct opposite. So this was how the knowledge worked, is the knowledge, you could really build on it, and it was solid. Like you would come to discover incredible things, not only about yourself, but also people around you. And it holds to this day. You will notice even after knowing certain things about the numbers, that even the house that you're living in. Now, here's another thing, like this is another massive thing, because we're here on August the 30th again, right? Now, we definitely didn't plan this, but see, what you're also looking to do is you're looking to just set your clock, right? So you could even say it's like your spiritual circadian rhythm. All you're trying to do is get your being back in tune with the big wheel, okay? Because when you're moving with the big wheel, there's a time and a place for everything, and nothing stands in your way, right? It would be like somebody trying to stop the sun with their bare hands from its movements. It's not going to happen. So the key here is actually to synchronize yourself with the planetary energy forces that actually are a part of you. And so that way, when Monday comes around, you already are in the resonance of, let's say in this case, the moon, and what the moon is ultimately responsible for in relation to your life. Tuesday rolls around, Wednesday rolls around, or you have a plan for, like, I'm trying to, buy this house, okay? Just something maybe as mundane as that, even though that's not so mundane these days, right? I'm trying to buy a house. So when you learn the system, and that's always the first part is, and that's why we gave Metametrics, is the first part is to know your power first, because it's going to be easiest to see your power and identify your power. And then that's already going to synchronize you in the resonance and put you on your path. Then when you are witnessing the other powers within you, it's easier to communicate and actually to harmonize with those powers, right? Because, like, for instance, some people are afraid of Saturn, right? Like, these planets move in almost like a yin yang. So there's always what we call the challenger, because in this language, there was no such thing as the word enemy. There was only what we call challenges. And that's actually why they leveled the playing field between the Asuras and the Huras, because it wasn't really much of a challenge in that way. So things came out of balance. But now when you have certain power and certain awareness, as it says here, let's go up here, we have the most, there's a lot of knowledge here. See, so we have the challenges, right? And why these numbers become challenges. So these are people, like, even in your life, it could be even your children, but it always helps to know, oh, okay, they do get on my nerves just like that. Wow. And it also allows you to be more compassionate, right? Because you realize that they're just being who they are, right? And then you have what we call friends. And friends are just numbers that you're going to find that you're always going to be able to do things with these kind of people. And it's going to be really progressive versus like you're pulling teeth. Now, we do need both, because obviously if you don't have challenges, as we talked about earlier, you don't get sharpened up. You don't see the yin if you're the yang. You don't get the contrast. You don't get any of that, right? So you need those challenges, but you also need to know your friends. You need to know also what is the most ideal mate, right? Even if you're married now, you know what I mean? It's kind of, if you're working with this, because ultimately we put this together for the family. So that way a person would even know all of the position of all the members in their family. And then they would be able to increase the strength of their family and the strength of their nucleus, because everyone would technically return to their celestial power, or their power that resonates from the stars. So in conclusion, what I'm saying is that all this time, like if you definitely, in some of these new traditions, like in ceremonial magic and all this, they're constantly evoking these energies as being external beings, and they see it that way. And the reason why you often see these people in misfortune, they're telling you about how to be rich, but they don't have any money. They're telling you about how to get rid of your problems, but they're in trouble. They're telling you about how to, be a man, but still staying at their mother's house. You see what I mean? Or how to be a father, but don't have any children. You see, so what happens is that there becomes like a time where we have to learn from our masters. So that way we know what the pillars are and the roots are to our powers. And then when you enter into the game, you enter in as a complete awareness of your character. And it's every bit of a game. And the reason why we call it a game is because, as I said before, anything that passes away is an illusion. So you can see things in the world often pass away, right? And it does make sense that anything, of course, that passes away would be categorized as illusion, because it's literally disappearing. But think about that even deeper, that the stuff that's going to go away is the illusion, but you're not going to go away. And I want to let you know also that because of your power, you got to think about, we can't die, right? This is known facts, as they say. We can't die. So how do you keep a being that can't die, that's infinite, under control? You must constantly project to them a confusing and disorientating reality.
Mm-hmm.
You have to control the power. The power in this case is the currency, the money. And then you have to keep them reliant on that power and not aware of the current of the sea, right? Or currency.
Yeah.
Which again is the current. And if you now think about again, now this is the last thing. Now think about this visualization. So I showed you the ocean and I told you that there were pinions or pillars of power that correspond to the stars in the ocean. Okay. And then what they're doing is they're churning the waters. Okay. Because the ocean is the waters of life. They're causing the currents, just like if you sail the sea, a sailor knows, how he's going to get where he's going to go. He charts that out. Remember, you chart it out, and then you could get to your destination because you're following the current. But what does the current also correspond to? The stars. You can tell what current is moving based on what stars are moving through. So see, that knowledge right there, that's the knowledge of not just navigating a boat, but the true metaphors of what a boat is. You're in a boat.
Right.
You see what I mean?
And Sevan, when you started the show, you said one of the things that they did, I guess that kind of put us on the spell, was that they made the gods external. And I just want to add, one of the things that they also did that I think really hurt our people in society is that they made currency external. And it's something that, there's a sister that come on this channel. She speaks. Her name is Erin Lyon. She said one time that there should be no difference vibrationally how you feel about yourself, whether you have $5 or $5 million. And oftentimes our vibration changes with the amount of external fiat we have in our pocket. But if we was to realize, Sevan, that we are the currency, I would be rich whether I lived in the train station, I lived in a mansion, I lived in a hotel, I lived in a shelter, or wherever I lived, I would know I'm wealthy, and I would because I'm carrying that vibration.
Yes.
That vibration would eventually be projected into my reality. So I just want to add, I definitely feel that currency, them making currency external from who we are, was a big mind fuck, bro.
For sure. And actually what you're talking about, even from the most basic level, is the narrative.
Yeah.
Okay. That the narrative that we give ourselves really controls all our power. And the money is a part of that narrative. Right. Yeah. But I remember going through some crazy stuff. But because I gave myself a different narrative, I was able to get right through it, because I was like, you're going to have this time to sit down. This is the time that you should have laid out to learn. Now learn. You see what I mean? Or you learn that lesson if you can give yourself the proper narrative. And then the reality, though, that this is, if you know the story, and that's, kind of what you've been doing that for years now, is getting different parts of the story, right? And putting the whole story together. Now you choose the narrative too, though, right? Like you got to choose, so what is my story, right? And then I notice also another big thing is scrambling the gods, okay? Because once we get an external god, but then you try to mix gods in from other cultures, because, other cultures invade other cultures. They try to mix their gods in. All you're doing is basically like scrambling time in that way. And you're making it more difficult for the person to really find, hey, where are my opinions? Because see, the pillars, and they're to keep you you're being tossed about an ocean, right? So you need something to be like, this is solid, right? You need to be able to get to the center. But when you're playing games in their game, see, that's what I'm saying. Like when we start adapting to their cultures, their gods, their perspectives, and how they see things, and I'm just using they as a general term, right? The controllers, you get things like this. Okay. Now this is just a simple highlighting, because as you can see here, what I showed you earlier, I showed you the sator square. But one word that you can spell from this is tarot, right? It doesn't appear here as a word, but you can spell tarot with this, because tarot means a wheel, right? Because the tarot cards are a wheel. You also notice tenets here, right? Which is how to move back and forward through time. The principles of how to move back and forward through time, right? Which is, Denzel Washington's son's movie, right? Tenet. Right? They move back and forward through time, right? So now notice how in this game, That's how if they can switch the game up and they can control the narratives, then they will add like more pieces and cheat, right? So in this case, the Trump or the Joker, and this was a whole show, I think we talked about this a little bit here, but the Joker takes up 6 cards in the deck, okay? Not only is it the Trumps, as you know as the new hijack to the White House or whatever, right? But it's also the cards. No other card has this position or has this many cards. And then if you notice it's a position, Jack plays right next to the Queen and the King. You see what I mean? If Jack can eliminate the Queen and the King, Ace is only a number 1. So it can make itself the highest card. So these are like codes in the Matrix where you will understand that certain cards, even J as a letter, you know what I mean? You start noticing J is a hook, right? And in a lot of different things, like, from J to Z, you're going to get a J in the front because like there's a lot of Jameses in the development of even America, right? Like it's like 60% are named James. You see what I mean? So you start noticing James means the son of fire. Mess means the sons of, and Ja is fire. Same word with Sonya, right? It's backwards. Jason. Same word with Jason, right? So all those Jason, Sonya, James, Jacob, Diego, Yakub, all those are all of the same name. So you start understanding, the language is the game. But then remember, you got masters of the game. And this is where, like I said, like if we're left to our own vices based on the things that are going on right now, meaning that we don't have any blueprints, we will continue to get lots of people elaborating on the game, but because the game is really sophisticated and goes by specific rules, person may not actually, they may have part of it. Like, for instance, what I'm showing here is that, remember how a language is stored in a certain part of the brain, okay? So in that way, language is like a world. So when you go to this world, even that you're speaking English in, and the worlds that you speak English in the dreams, this is where that world is. And this is the encoding to that world. And this is the symbolism around this world. Like on the top left, directly below, that's the monogram of English and the Futhark runes, because English is Futhark runes. And any symbol in English or number can be mapped out on that specific symbol. Okay? And so what you have then is in the mind is you have a rolling code or rolling cube, almost like a Hellraiser.
Right.
And it's only because here's what happens. If you don't figure out time, because Saturn's the slowest mover, so that's why they always show Saturn at the end, all right? And it's that the words, and we're going to say the words specifically here, are the course, the cycle. Let me get my final word. Give me 1 second here. And these are the words related to time. You have the courses. These are just the 3 ones we're going to use today. The courses, the hours, and the cycles. Okay? And so all we're talking about is courses are, going around something. Right? Generally, we even call, like when we're learning something, a course. Hey, he's got a few courses he's selling. Okay? It means to wear a groove into something. So everything that we've talked about today with wheels and patterns, time, it all evokes the same vision of courses and something that is even spinning around something, right? Consistently. Like we talked about the center. And then we have hours because time is a big factor here. Time is inferior to the sun. And let me just explain that real quick. When we measure the powers of the hour, we measure them by when the sun comes up. We don't measure them by what time of the day it is. Okay? But the reality is that because people use time to measure their day, they are on an inferior system. So they're under the power in that way of Saturn, which is which is replete, what I'm saying, because if you don't know how to control time, then time will for sure control you. You won't be able to slow it down or speed it up or do any of that. So in that way, you're under, in that tense or context, you're under the power of Saturn. Versus those who know how to control time, they use the sun, because the only way to line up all the elements, if you may, is to base it on when the sun rises inside of your territory. Okay, so just follow me on this. So the hours are very important because these are the intervals that mark the segments of the energy's division. Because to make this fair, each energy appears at its designated time. So when the world was divided into these 7 parts, if you may, time was divided into these 7 parts. Each of the part gets its specific time and gets its specific hour. Okay, so we have the hour, and then we have cycles, right? Which, they talk about Bhaktans, Kali Yugas, or how long does it take for us to get complete, for the sky to make a complete turn, right? Because this is all about cycles. So now what I'm connecting you to is I'm showing you, hey, there's patterns here, there's languages here, there's things on the periodic table, there's DNA. So I've left out nothing that it takes to create a reality. I actually gave you a little bit more of stuff that it takes to create actualities and other realms and dimensions, right? So we have enough to create worlds with courses, hours, and cycles.
Hey, Sevan, what's your opinion about daylight savings time?
Well, I live on the equator. Okay, so I'm in Costa Rica still, right? And there's Ecuador right here. So we never have a daylight savings time because daylight savings time is a byproduct of trying to line time back up. Based on being on a pole and them still trying to put numbers to designate what time of the day it is versus each person just using when the sun rises as being their first hour, which an occultist has to do. Because the first hour is always ruled by the archetype of that day. And you need, this is something that that's why they call it a practice, because practice makes perfect. And once you know this, you feel it. It's not like you even know, oh, shoot, we hitting tomorrow. And eventually you stop even thinking about it because your subconscious mind is really, way more powerful to control these kind of elements. Okay. But just to clarify, those words, courses, hours, and cycles are also the root to the words curses, right? So courses and curses sound pretty similar. Why? It's because in this process, like a course is also a journey, like, hey, get on that course, the obstacle course, okay? So on the journey, you're going to entwine with many things. That's why we're all in different reality. We all have a different reality. We're sharing this reality.
Right.
We're sharing the earth and all this, right? So we're weaving in together like a tapestry, okay? But what happens if you weave in with some elementals that their formulas are all screwed up, okay? This is what we would call diseases and hereditary problems, debts, and being defaced, dismembered. All those different kind of things are products of curses. That's what curses really are. So the only way to actually really remove curses is to actually know how to move time around. Because a person who can do this actually moves through what you call the dream realm and redoes certain things that they may have done not only in the past on this earth, but also in other places. And then benefits in the present as if they never made that decision, and now they're in the condition of never making that decision. You get where I'm coming from? So this is how time manipulation works. Just very clearly, you move actually through time, generally within the sleep, what you call the dream world, because the cogs are different. It's easier to move through the dream world and get things happening here. This is a slow cog. So you could set up stuff in the dream world and then it'll manifest here in like 3 months. But if you ever wanted to like really work with time for healing, you basically go back to when certain things happen and you change what happened then. And then you arrive back into the present and you feel like what it would be like if that never had happened that way.
Right.
Okay, so that's how you're doing this internal work. So to remove yourself from curses, you need to master time. Also the horrors. Okay, this is about the hours or the seasons, and this is something you notice about technology has gotten a decent amount of control over things, and we kind of know where to set up cities and where not to. But if you ever been someplace and a natural disaster comes through, like a tornado or a strong storm, you realize right away that things could get really ugly and bad and horrific. Okay, so just in conclusion, the seasons do bring about sometimes conditions in which that are terrible to those who are not able to remove themselves from it. Right, so that's where horror and hour connect. And then the last one is the cycle, or the cycles. The cycles are also the psycho. This is the same word, PSY, like crazy, okay? Because you'll also notice people who do practice magic, they can get a little crazy when it's not working out the proper way, like, because they get all scrambled, right? And then in that process, they actually do go cycle. They actually kind of pin themselves to the moon. They never really make it beyond that first ladder. And then it just starts to really just subconsciously take toll on their minds. And because they can't escape that pattern or that field or that orbit, they then literally get demented in a certain way, right? So in this lesson, there's like somebody at the end that's saying, okay, look, we're all running this race, right? But then there's somebody that's running it slower than everybody. And if that happens to catch up with you, you will die, okay? But it's not like the death in like, oh, Johnny's gone, but it's the death as it will cut you right in two. That's what the scythe is for. It will divide you from this reality and then split the energy and put part of you in one reality and part of you in the next reality. You see what I mean? So this is the process again, and that's the ultimate toll that you pay if you don't master time, right?
All right. So Terrence. Oh no, I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's what we're talking about. This is the opus then on why these powers important. Because Saturn is the slowest moving planet. So to beat the slowest in the game, Saturn's metal is lead for a reason. Like it's, you know what I mean? So it's very encouraging in a way to understand also when a person is moving on a Saturn path, right? They have a tendency to be dealing with lots of drama early in life. But if they can hold through all of life, like they're the most stable, they're the most financially sound, they're the ones who run the whole company. But, if they can make it to that part of the journey, and that's why, when you know your path already, it's easier to optimize. It's easier for you to resonate. It's easier for you to stand completely in your power and work from that angle or that demand, if you may, because, you need to now study more about what are your yins and your yangs, your strengths and your weaknesses and how to utilize them. But this gives you a hard-coded way. And as I said, it's written in the stars. And they did this because, I can't say it's even like who is they that did it. But this is so that when you come into the knowledge, you won't have to really wonder in that way. Like they'd be like, looking at the stars and they ain't wonder. You will actually be accurate with your sciences and what you feel is actually happening in the reality and where that energy is coming from. Yeah.
All right, so I gotta ask you about, you're an inventor. I wish I had the clock, the watch that I got from you. It's in the room. I'm gonna go get it soon. But you have a lot of inventions. You put a lot of products together. Somebody that was on, a brother named Terrence Howard was on Billy Carson's show yesterday, Forbidden Knowledge. I happened to watch it. It was over 10,000 people live. People were excited to see Terrence on there. He was previously on Joe Rogan and kind of got attacked by Eric Weinstein, I believe. I mean, Eric Weinstein was saying things like, your brain isn't working right and stop teaching. He kept telling him, stop teaching. There's something wrong with, like, the insults were just like, and, obviously some people, thought that was normal. Some people were outraged by it. But one of the things that Terrence said when he got on Billy Carson's show last night, he said that they were just mad that a self-taught black man came up with these inventions or came up with these discoveries about mathematics. And he said that, and when he said this, a lot of white people in the chat got mad. It was like, is it? One comment said, "Is this a black supremacy? Is this a black supremacy channel?" Like they was mad. They were real triggered when he said this. He said every other race, and we're talking about star genetics. So he said every other race, and I didn't expect him to say this, not him. He said every other race has 6 DNA sequences. Descendants of Africans have 9 DNA sequences. So they should not be surprised that I was able to come up with these patterns and these inventions and this version of mathematics. So what I want to ask you about is what's your thoughts of him saying that? And if descendants of Africans have 9 DNA sequences, all other races have 6 DNA sequences, where do we come from in the star system, in the star clusters? And where do they come from in the star systems, in the star clusters, to give them 6 DNA sequences and to give us 9, 7?
Wow. I mean, these matters are, there's of a deep nature. I think that this measure was actually ether, like 6 ether, 7 ether, 8 ether, 9 ether. I think this is the original concept of, the different variations between races, which also could be seen even within the hair. My deep dives on this get to planetary origins, such as those who come from Orion, which surprisingly OpenAI is naming their next model, versus those who are native to Sirius. And in all things, like if you look at those DNA sequences and then realize that there's like a plant, seriously, that's growing in the ocean that has like 2,000, you start to almost like really wonder, is it really how many of these DNA that we have that make us the most intelligent? Okay. So maybe I wouldn't argue necessarily that as being the deciding factor, more so than that and I think, like I saw you had a seer on the show, and, I like listening to Seer's builds, for multiple reasons. One, just because he's a genius mind, and he's got a stickler for details too. And so in that way, he's already really uncovered for everybody how the societies have been completely flipped over, especially in relation to who was originally in possession of this deep occult knowledge, especially when it relates to mathematics, like algebra, or algebra, which is even Aldebaran, even Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Jabbar means a giant. You know what I mean? So you have a legacy, if you may, that reverberates a specific kind of energy. And that energy is ancient in a way that it's in the know. Let's just put it like that. Like if it's not always hijacked and suppressed, then it operates almost like an apex from a wisdom and a knowledge level. Okay. And the easiest way that I can put this is that, and I'm not sure why this image, I'm about to flip it here, always comes out like flip, but let me flip it real quick and show here that. So just for the record, so that we know, regardless of what was going on in those empires, because you always have to understand that for sure, not everybody is on the up and up. Like you get good kings, you get bad kings, you know what I mean? So you can't necessarily say one race of people has always had like really good rulers, like consistently. They're good rulers and bad rulers is what I'm saying. But in this, and I'm going to open this up now, we had a situation that occurred where all of this master knowledge was hijacked. That's the easiest way to say the term, because that's the best term, hijack. It was taken, and this knowledge is about a lot of different stuff. Like it's chemicals, it's reactions, it's planets, it's stars, it's language, it's numbers. So it's not really limited. I believe that, maybe the original idea of what Islam is as a word more corresponds to this, not this modern Islam stuff that's going on now. but like a science, if you may, of how all of it operates, including your body, etc. Okay. So for a time, for a long period of time, this knowledge, understanding that this first comes from Nagas. So Nagas are reptilian, so they have the strongest level of melanin within their bodies, right? And they became, in many ways, the base DNA that is used to create all other subsequent life forms. This is still goes on inside of, like, if you're a geneticist or you're working with DNA, maybe you got a CRISPR machine, you need to use the zygote of a reptilian generally to start off the synthesis process. Is one strand DNA, right? So what I'm explaining is that I'm explaining that with this level of knowledge, is you got to tiptoe around this, right? So it's just, but I'm not tiptoeing because I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes. I'm tippy-toeing because you need all of the context, right? And the context of this is that just like we see now, this is a predominantly Caucasian-dominated system when it comes to banking, right? And it comes to startups and technology and all of this kind of stuff. And that has happened because the knowledge and the wisdom of the inner workings of these things have been removed from certain cultures. Just like if you go to, even in Costa Rica, they don't have the strongest level of curriculum. If you go to countries in Africa, so only now, you go to Cambridge, you go to Yale, you go to MIT to get all of this high level, quote unquote, advanced knowledge about working in society, chips, and how to run companies and all this kind of stuff. All right. So what I'm saying is that kind of knowledge, which was still structured quite differently, was really in the hands of melanin dominant people since the beginning, because the Nagas were the ones that initiated the world into this knowledge, mainly Shukra. And again, that's where the Messiah story comes from, is the Messiah story comes from the Naga, because the Nagas came from the center of the earth to populate the surface. This is coming forth by day. That's the picture that they show, like a dark Naga coming out of the center of the earth and then bringing in, coming forth by day, meaning that now you're coming into a physical reality. You're coming out of because these beings, I mean, there's a lot of write-ups about the Nagas and their knowledge and their wisdom, because it supersedes, it is the system of knowledge that we're using here on the planet now. And this knowledge is either Venusian, but predominantly Syrian, okay? And predominantly, if you could say, they're more reptilian than they are mammalian. But mammalian is a graduation in that way. It's like reptiles become mammals, one strand becomes two strand and then keeps moving. And in that process, we gain more senses, we gain different things, and some stuff we even goes dormant. Okay. So what you're looking at is a complete process of development of multiple beings, different types. White ones, black ones, yellow ones, whatever colors you want to give them, they're all different formulas in that way, right? However, in the times that we're living in right now, it had become a white or a black thing, right? That's like a caste system. And then when that entered in, there was an agenda to remove all of the melanin dominant power structures, period. Okay? And this is like a war against the snake. That's why, like, a lot of countries like America, they have a bird. Like a lot of these newer territories, they use the bird as a symbol, and they make it like the snake is the one that is the bad one. Okay. And this is that same celestial, like those things in the air, war with those things that are on the ground. And so it's very clear that the Moors actually had all the knowledge replete, like, for thousands of years, but their knowledge didn't start even with language or math, but more of dealing with entities and spirits. You see what I mean? Like, that's why I was letting everybody understand that the Sharif is the controller of spirits, and that is passed down finally today as a sheriff who's wearing a silver star, which of course silver and pentagrams are used to to bind certain entities. So now this criminal, generally a black dude, is the demon, and he's the one wearing the star and playing the role as a sheriff to capture and chain this demon and then make it even work and serve and do their bidding. You see what I mean? So because this magic works on all levels, someone base can take it and make a base game out of it, right? And say, okay, those same things that we would do on the spirit, they would do on the spiritual realm, because the Moors were also known, as it is today with the Haitians, as it is with the Africans, to take the lower spirits at times and hold them against their will or dominate them, because they're more gentle and peaceable spirits, mainly like the spirit. Some of the spirits of the water are very gentle and peaceable. So you can put these spirits in pots and make them do things that correspond to their domains, right? And they could be done, they can be made to do that under force, or also, which is like a you could use like a cunning. This means that, like with every being, there's certain things that you like to eat, right? And so they could bring something or offer something that this being can't resist to accomplish certain things. So this is the realm of sharifs. This is the realm of the wazirs, okay? The real wizards. So then when we fast forward, all the other stuff like language and math and all that stuff is birthed from that, okay? So this means that when you're aware of that spiritual knowledge, which it's like encoded within us for sure, right? And I do believe that, you know, it gives you in certain ways mineralization. That's what I like to call it. It gives you more depth because you have that. While some, they actually were referring to them as the moon people, that this was like really one of their first times into systems like this. So the longer you're in systems like this, you become more layered, you become more weathered, and you become more wise until eventually you leave as the all wise one. When you first come in, you're like base. You only have really one layer. You're really surface. And so your whole way of going at things is totally different, right? But again, to answer the question here, so what happened is when the secret societies that you would say are black secret societies, which kind of ended with even King James, Charles, Charlemagne, etc., them finally bringing the secrets of the Naga into some type of Christianized version, okay? Meaning that they took the knowledge of Nubia, which is where the Naga sat in the seat of the Delta, came forth by day, and brought forth some of the first physical beings on the planet. So this particular culture, if you may, which spread the world and populated the world, as they've already let everybody know, the roots to the world is quote unquote nine ether. And you know, I'm not sure if I kind of lost my train of thought here, but okay, so yeah, so what I'm saying is that, so then when these new societies came in, and over time, and this started with the overthrow of the matriarch for sure. It's already recorded. Like if you want to go through some of that knowledge, it's in Sybil. Maybe we'll have it for a whole nother day. But there was a queen. There were queens of the Nagas. Like the Nagas were a matriarch in themselves. And there came a time where the sons challenged their mother in a way where they began to take over the kingdoms and remove the woman from her position. And in that, some say that was the reason. They call it that the dazzling face ones were went to war with the black-headed ones. This is what it's contained in the texts that are in Tamil. Okay, and so in this, what I'm saying is that it then became where all of the occult treaties no longer had melanated people as a part of them at the top. Okay, so meaning all the secret societies were overthrown, like even Freemasonry itself. I did a whole show on this, how the Illuminati entered into ancient Freemasonry and brought in ceremonial magic, brought in a whole new different set of gods and new concepts and ideals. When the old one, again, the old arc is really just based on drawing power from the moon. That's what Solomon is. It's basically the magic of the moon and how the moon is really one of the key components to controlling everything in the game, right? So this knowledge was racialized, where now in the new society, Black people could no longer have this knowledge because either it not only awakes a certain part of them, but remember, there are many people who practice malevolent arts that are also Black people. It actually happens quite often, right? So you can melt down easily on your own power with not being able to control your anger. You see what I mean? So let's just keep it as it is, that just because you have power doesn't mean you know how to use it. Most people have failed in trying to control power, no matter what color they are. We continue to see this. So, but not everybody. But in this, because all the treaties were made, the new treaties were made with all Anglo tribes, meaning that the Anglo and the European tribes control the secret societies now. And only the bottom initiatory levels actually have in them where, you know, these lodges are open to Black men, if you may, coming into these knowledge. Those are recruiting grounds. Freemason is the portico or the porch. It's a recruiting ground. So basically, when you apply there, all these other societies scan you and things, or if you try to go to another society, you got to apply. You know, this is just stuff that you learn over time from others that are either in this or on YouTube talking about it. And you read something, you put all this stuff together, you realize that they're recruiting these occultists starting off in societies like Freemasonry to determine if they're going to become a part of societies that are now like 200, 300, 400 years old. But none of these societies really contain at their top melanin dominant people anymore, right? And this is because, again, that knowledge and wisdom about how to power yourself through the energy that is moving through every day and even through yourself will probably pose as a great challenge. Okay. So in conclusion, also, then when you can kind of quell that a little bit, no more practicing with the old systems, no more practicing with the old way that things were, you can then switch everybody over to a new system where they will be completely disorientated in this new system. And this new system is not so much as church and Christianity, but really economics and how to even deal with money, debt. Like they borrow money till they die, basically leveraging money from one to another. Also, you know, the startup companies and all this stuff that you see. But the main rules that are going on behind the scenes that are sometimes things that we're not seeing that make things very unfair, and which is more than likely what Terrence is talking about, is that on those levels, medium to top, behind closed doors, when it's time to choose who's going up or who's going down, if you're leaving it to them, they're going to pick their own every single time, and they're going to try to hold down what you have every single time. That has been my experience. At this stage, we have not only created the first conscious ecosystem, which is a social network. It's fully built out. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars out of my books, right? We built spiritual AI, right? We got inventions, like you mentioned, you got the cosmic clock. I have nanoparticles, nanomineral, right? So all this, like, it seems like they could do one of these and become multimillionaire, be all up on TV, Forbes. Look at this one. He created 4 companies. How did he do this, right? And, you know, you're still pushing a humanitarian message, right? So this is the makeup. You know, I'm sitting here as an example. This is the makeup of somebody who's really checking all the boxes. But yes, like Terrence saying, being self-educated, like I didn't graduate high school. I have a GED. I read all the way up to F in the encyclopedia and began to educate myself from there, then took my Microsoft certification and then passed that. And then when I would go and start getting jobs, they wouldn't even care they didn't even ask about whether I had been to college, or they didn't ask about whether I had graduated high school. They just took that Microsoft certification and they said, we'll put you on because then they could put in their business, we have Microsoft certified agents. So that's actually when I was getting my first jobs in technology, was because I got that certification. You see what I mean? So the reality here is that when you're, just like what we read earlier today, when you're put through quite a bit, and you know, I try personally to stay on the unified tip, because the mind has to be completely unified for it to perform the great work. But you have to know where everybody is in this whole thing. No, it's not like you got good ones and bad ones. Really, you got temperaments and formulas, right? And you have to know how to navigate them, how to utilize them, and when to stay away from them in that way, right? But in this process of us becoming successful in this day and age, we could want to be nice, and this is just giving the truth here. Like, this is not everyone. It's like saying everybody is the one that's a terrorist or something like that. But in general, when we're trying to get ahead and trying to introduce something that is on another level and taking things to the next stage, it's not really supported, right? And then, like in Terrence's case, that's like an anomaly, because don't let somehow millions of people figure you see it. You see what I mean? That's like an anomaly in itself, because it's like millions of people watched that Joe Rogan show. So all of a sudden, millions of people were being exposed to really a lot of the stuff that Rod Hayes and you see what I mean? You can start naming a lot of people, even Sanchez, and you can name a lot of brothers that I see here. You can name different people who have come into this space that have something very unique that they've mastered. You see what I mean? But it won't get that same like notoriety, like, yo, this is a new thesis and a new way to look at life, because see, they're constantly doing that. Like, they just discovered, like it was something the other day, man. I'm like, man, y'all, they just discovered, they just discovered that in the ocean, there's actually rocks that are responsible for bringing oxygen into the ocean. And these rocks do this through an electrolysis process. So these rocks are made of metals, and just like with an electrolysis process, these metals inside of the salt water emit, in this case, oxygen, and that creates all the oxygen that you have in the deep ocean, okay? And their concept before that was that the sun's light is needed to create photosynthesis on the surface of the water with algae and other green plants, and then these plants transfer oxygen into the water. And then this would mean, of course, as you get deeper, there would be less and less oxygen because the sun is not reaching that area and there are no green plants. And they've been rolling with this for at least 80 to 100 years now.
Right.
Until recently, they just did a simple experiment, which was they measured like this part of the water about how much oxygen was. And then they went way down there and they measured down there and found out that there was more oxygen down there than up here. What's going on? And so they went into this crazy thing, upset the whole scientific community and everything, because there's theses written on this. Right. And ultimately they found out it's these rocks. Go look it up right now. They just figured this out 2-3 weeks ago. So the reality here is that, so maybe like if you look at something like that, that almost seems like common sense to find out. But with this institution, because they lack that. See, there's a flavor to a genius, and there's a swag to the genius. It's like literally the difference between a professor who knows everything, but you're getting bored even listening to him. So you're not even really absorbing anything he's saying. He's teaching it in such a dry way. It's almost like it's not him. It's not a part of him. It's something he's examining. Okay. Versus there's another one that he'll come through and it's like it makes up the very fiber of who he is. You can kind of see it in his eyes, and you know, like you look at when you look at certain cats, like you guys just look at their eyes and you can see, okay, he really is in on this. And in that way of pursuing something, you're not just going to get the surface of it. Oh, well, must be oxygen coming from the surface. You're going to get the depths of it. Like, hey, I keep seeing this same geometry throughout everything that y'all are maybe calling like y'all highest knowledge, but you haven't even bought this geometry out yet. Like the septahedron is the last Platonic solid, but you don't see it in the Platonic solid collection because the dude just discovered it like, what, 5 or 6 years ago? He was calling the Chestahedron, right? Because his name is Chester. So but again, in those societies, though, they will have all of that knowledge, but more importantly, the root. So just to answer your question, like, yeah, I do feel like that it's extremely imbalanced with how we can come through as a people with innovations that also are designed to regenerate. Because that's another thing, is like we're a regenerative force. So we really want to see the oceans clean. We want to see the children raised properly. We want to see restoration of the society. We're at that stage now in our growth. You see what I mean? But as I said before, I can't say that as a people, as a whole, as a collective, that we always been going through that in that direction. And so this game for us has been really navigating all the way from the netherworld. Because remember, the ocean is the netherworld. That's why a lot of the mythos, even Osiris and Isis and all this stuff, all this plays out in the ocean. Like even in the African traditions and the magic, all that stuff plays out with entities that are in the ocean. It's already known that Saturn's kingdom is in the ocean. All the technologies that we're dealing with on the surface are manufactured first and tested and everything in the ocean. And then the ocean also has portals to other spaces and time, right? And but again, for a person who can't even figure out that there has to be something else generating oxygen for us to have oxygen down there, for them to not release a society that they have even come to that level of awareness yet, right now, it definitely seems like somebody not to be following. So I'll put it like that. So in this way, not so much as to go into beef with the scientific institutions and royal societies and all that, because they know what they've done. They've stole all the knowledge, period. It's more of to ask ourselves these days, who should we really be following, quote unquote, based on whatever our goals are.
Indeed.
Right.
All right. Seven, wow. Magnificent conversation as usual. We definitely got to do this more. I got 2 more questions because I got to get up early. I got an event that I'm doing tomorrow. And actually, let me give it a shout out while we got about 2,000 people in the room. For anybody that's in the Atlanta area, I want y'all to come out. This is going to be fun. We're having a first annual Double Dutch Day. So we're having a day of family, fun, and healthy activities. This is a free event. You can bring your family, bring your children, and we want the family to engage more in exercise, healthy activities. We want to be around each other more. We have a global community now, but if you're in the Atlanta area, definitely come out. We're going to be at Wadata Healthy Market, and that's on 878 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, and we're going to be out there from 1 to 5. KT's going to be out there debuting some exclusive herbs that he never had before, that he recently got from Mexico, that Dr. Sabi used to talk about. Blue pill will be out there. Red pill will be out there. There's going to be a lot of people. Like King Simon's going to be out there. So we want the ladies, we want the brothers, we want the children, we want everybody outside the mall. I'm also going to live stream it on the channel. So if you can't make it, you can just tune in tomorrow from 1 to 5. We're going to be filming outside, but it's going to be fire. It's going to be amazing. Make sure y'all come through, family. All right. But like I said, so let me just ask you 2 more questions. We got to do this more often. Seven. I was about to call you Terrence. We got to do this more often, Seven. But let me ask you, you're going back to talking about the waters. So earlier you said water is a byproduct of our soul. In our culture today, and let's talk a little bit about the afterlife. In our culture today, when we make the transition, when our avatar is no longer functioning, they take our body and they put it in the dirt, 6 feet in the dirt. I remember some people like the idea. I remember my uncle one time, he said when he dies, he said, cremate me and throw my ashes in the ocean. He wanted to be in Hawaii, Waikiki. Being buried in the earth versus being buried, cremated, and being buried in the water, what impact does that have on reincarnation and also the afterlife with your soul's journey?
I'm not sure. And, I probably can count on one hand about how many times I've ever said that. I've often pondered that. Like, what happens if I'm cremated? What happens if, I get released and just let the hawks eat my body.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because different cultures have different explanations for that. So
Yeah.
I've gone over all their explanations, so I know what they say.
Right.
But I think death is one of those things that you really need to kind of know, right?
Yeah.
Versus you're like, I think this happened. And, like what the official consensus is for me is that everything will return to its origin.
Mhm.
Okay. So I have two theories about this. So you could they both are like balanced in this way that what I have witnessed is that it seems that all of what we're made of develops on different levels. So even what we're calling the body has like an energetic component to it. And
Mhm.
in the event that your body graduates, that energetic component that it becomes next, you guys choose to continue in your journey together. Versus if the body basically degrades, but the spirit triumphs, it's almost like you have a parting of ways. So the reason why I came up with this, you can call it a theory, is because I noticed like with things like, for instance, the heart is not always the same age as the spleen in a person's body. Certain organs literally are much older than other organs through time, right? So whether that happens because of the orbits and the organs are really the planets, or if it happens just because you're putting more wear and tear on that organ, that's still out for the jury. But let's just say officially that the body and what it consists of, I don't believe is like one form, but yet multiple forms all intertwine with each other going through the experience. Because I've witnessed things like with using the third eye, it appears like things like the hand is almost like operating on its own volition. Like the hand is the gods, if you may, right? And you can see this when you look. Sometimes you even see like little faces on your fingertips, okay? Another thing is that you get that there were specific terms for this, but basically like this anthropomorphic creation is multiple things in harmony. Like they talked about how the angels on the Mount of Harmon bound themselves to a pact to do this thing. That's nothing but the body and all the elements that it's made out of. But surely the heart doesn't do the same thing as the spleen or the liver. So in many ways, just like we've seen with these energies, they're separate, but they all work together in order to animate the complete being. So that's one concept on what could potentially happen with the body based on what happens when you leave from here, as far as like, whether it's burned, water, drowned, whatever, or put in the water or whatever you do with it, that ultimately every single part is going to graduate and then reform itself as that graduated collective, if you may. Yeah, I believe that also that you have these same components like your organs, etc., in your spirit body, but they show up as more of chakras and lights inside of that body. So in many ways, even if you burn this, and that's why I was saying anything that is fine. Anything that is temporary, anything that's temporary is an illusion. So if you burn this and it all went away, it was illusion to begin with. So I just believe that all this stuff is going to graduate on with what we are, and it doesn't matter as much of what kind of burial that you take place in. But again, the jury's still out on that, because there is this ritual that you're talking about with this 8-sided box, if you may, or 6-sided box, 6 feet under. I found this in ritual books. See what I mean? Actually, mainly the one that looks like the coffin that they put Dracula in. You know how it cut off here, and then it goes down here, then it goes down here, and then it goes down here. That's those particular kind of coffins are in initiatory books of being something's going on with them, even how deep you're buried, etc. But that's not even the same coffin that they're using now. They're using this rectangular coffin. So is this another initiation? You see what I mean? So yeah, the jury is still kind of out on what exactly is the difference between how you're put to rest.
Indeed.
Mhm.
I definitely, man, wow, I definitely appreciate the honesty And I could tell it's something that was in your heart because you was just like, I pondered that. I don't know. I ponder that
Yeah,
often.
because
So
I always thought about, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna get sprinkled over to Mount Everest, or
yeah,
what I mean? Like I said, am I gonna be eaten up by vultures? You know what I mean? So my spirit can ascend.
right. No, indeed.
Some folks, they want to turn themselves into a tree. They got the thing where you kind of
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
couch, and the tree is feeding from you now.
And before I ask this last question, I want to give a shout out. This I absolutely love wearing this right here. This is one of Sevan's devices. Do you still have this on your website, Sevan?
Yeah. The cosmic clocks are still there. I see
Yeah,
you.
the
You may
cosmic.
have dropped him. I might have to ship you
Yeah, it man. Listen, I done dropped. Listen, I dropped it. I lost it. I wore it outside because it come off. So you got to be careful. I gave her brother a pound. Like, what's up? And it dropped on the floor. And then the brother was like, he returned it to me. He was like, Brother Rich, I think I seen your show with Sevan. Ain't this yours? I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. So this thing refuses to leave me, and I'm thankful for having it. But yeah, you got to be real careful when you wear it outside.
that bezel was wood. So
yeah, even. Yeah, I gotta. I think I gotta talk to you about cleaning it also.
yeah.
I think
Yeah,
I lost the thing that you sent with me.
that cleans it up really nice.
Yeah, but I gotta.
I wanted to explain one more thing.
Yeah.
This could be something that we close down with, because right now, technically we can't really have all the knowledge in the world, but if we don't have really a vision of what the future is going to be, then maybe that's not even useful, right? All the knowledge in the world. And I feel like sometimes in a world like this, you can see so many things going on, you may kind of lose grip with what is the ideal future, like what we talked about today. Like, how do you find the ideal future or paradise, and what does that look like? There's something that I just want to tell everybody to get ready to expect soon, maybe faster than you think, and that is that AI is actually going to replace the internet.
Huh? What you mean?
Yeah. Listen to what I'm saying. Technically, right now, if you can see how we're really being controlled, we already talked about that there's a control right now through the money. And also the internet is playing really a big role in that right now too, because the internet became the place that is like the open marketplace, right?
Right.
So just very briefly, a couple months ago, there was a huge lightning storm. It blew out the router on the fiber optic side. So we had to wait 2 days for them to get the internet back going. Happened to be over a weekend. And in those 2 days, I had like the most powerful vision about the future of how, when I kind of had to get over what I call the phantom internet thing, which was basically like you would just go to get on the internet real quick and you realize that there is no internet. So it's kind of like you reaching for your phone, but if your phone battery died and you're somewhere else, and you're like, oh shit, my battery died, right? So there was like this phantom getting on the internet to do something. And my inner voice was speaking and was like, what do you need to do with the internet? Why do you keep having access to internet? I want you to isolate that real quick in your mind. And what it was to get information. And I can remember, because I've been on the internet since Prodigy. I'm like 46 years old now. So I saw them roll the internet out. I'm old enough for that, right? And I can remember that our main goal of getting on the internet was to get information. All of a sudden, it opened up all this ability to get into all these libraries and to get all this knowledge. And what came right after that, though, like what was second in place, was communicating with people from other countries and basically meeting new friends, right? But it wasn't primary, because I have friends before I got on the internet. Just like you can make friends without the internet, and many of your friends, you would pretty much know them whether you had internet or not. So I was able to isolate this. Listen to where I'm coming from. I was able to isolate that the internet really became like, it took over a lot of things, because we had to keep accessing it every time we want to know something or stay in tune. And then now it's now it's also entwined with our how we get paid and stuff. So here's the vision of the future. Right now, we're running local AI. This means that I don't need internet to have AI. And when I say AI, because that's, everybody thinks they got their own ideas about what AI is, but we're just saying large language models. We're saying that everything that was learned on Earth, science, math, everything is in one drive. We'll put it like that. And if you can spin up that drive, you can ask questions about anything, especially stuff that you don't know about, and keep moving through your day. So if I need to like know about this specific plant because this plant is not growing properly and I need to build a structure for this plant, I can walk my way all the way through that process with never even accessing the internet. It's the same thing for pretty much everything across the board. I just walk myself through nanomedicine by just using my own local LLM, right? And never accessing the internet. And it got me to thinking. See, in the past, the reason why communities have failed is for a multitude of reasons, but the real underpinnings was one, lack of resources, where generally maybe one or a few people were bringing all the money. So they actually decided to have all the power, and then the community kind of went left that way. Also, when the people are allowed to interact too much with the world and they start bringing in the residue from the world, that's why a lot of communities try to stay, away from the world and keep their members and things away from the world. That gets, real cult-like for sure. But then also in that community, if there is only indoctrination, even if, sometimes the doctrine could be sound, but just giving a person only that and excluding everything else from them, then creates like a mind that doesn't really know how to explore for itself, doesn't really know how to embark on new things. It just believes the doctrine or the dogma. So in the event they have to function without that, it doesn't work out too well. And you see that happen with people who've been a part of communities for a long time. So I started realizing the real vision in the future is to begin to create communities where there are groups of people who are extremely motivated to see results and make results happen. And these communities start working with what we just call advanced intelligence, meaning that there is advanced intelligence on the facility. So anything that we need to know how to do, we don't never have to go to the internet or even too far outside the community to learn how to do it. In addition to that, we also get to a stage where as a people, we stop plugging into something that still it's hard to avoid getting the bad story. When you hit the internet, you're almost guaranteed to get flooded with all the stuff that would give an average person or somebody who's responsible for other people a lot of anxiety because you would be unsure about the future. And so again, I'm not just telling you what we're doing. What I'm doing is giving you a vision of how things actually begin to merge here in the future for a more ideal reality without plunging us back into the Stone Age, because a lot of people's idea about what things should be is not even sustainable. Like they're like, hey, let's go back on this land, live like indigenous people. The indigenous people are living, I'm in Costa Rica, there are people that live on their own land and on their own land. They drink like crazy, they argue, they fight, they don't have any money, their lights go off at a certain time. So it's not necessarily a solution to move back to the jungle. So I'm also saying no internet, not no power, right? Because we could pull power from the sun. But again, if you visualize now an institution with people who are motivated to grow, build, and create resources, because you got advanced intelligence. So it's all about just collaborating with people in the community about what do we feel like is the most advantageous, the most wholesome thing that we should go into creating next. But then we're not limited to like, oh, okay, but now we got to go and get funding from this Fortune 500. And then we also need to bring this person in and somebody that knows about this and somebody knows about this. You wouldn't be limited to that. So what I'm saying is that this, to me, it brought some joy into my heart because I kept thinking about like, how am I gonna, like, how can I ground into this? And I'm just saying, listen to what I'm saying. You can't turn on any of these powers either with being 1 foot in the dimension and 1 foot out. Meaning that there's a lot of people who they can't still figure out if they are gonna like ground in here and do something about this or create a family here or create a projection here, especially like our women for sure, in certain ways. It's like, you're asking a woman to make a kid here and, we depending on the bank and the inflation, you see what I mean? So even the subconscious mind would be a little troubled about, hey, what is really the future going to consist of? Because this looks like we're headed into nothing but problems. And I'm saying, no, that's not what's happening. What's happening is the wheat and the chaff are being separated. you're finding the people who you really rock with, that you really are vibrating with. We call it tribe. And then if you realize that advanced intelligence is here rather than throwing stones at it, because that's what's happening right now. You tell somebody AI and they feel like you trading on everybody, right? They don't even know you can run AI locally, and that OpenAI is not the only AI company, that there's open source models, that, and these things are just intelligent packets, right? And when you have one, you don't need to rely on other people's intelligences and all that kind of stuff to get to the conclusion that you're looking to reach. And as we're seeing, we're quite creative when left to our own vices, meaning that when we're not being distracted or told what we should be, you should be an influencer, or you should do this, you should go to OnlyFans. We have brilliant ideas that will easily make the top of the charts of these industries of what we're seeing today that people are actually buying. Okay, but you need a collective when you're moving, because you need to move into other countries. You need to be able to work with other languages. Like Sybil has 98 languages, right? So it speaks Greek, French, and different dialects and African languages and all that the same way with the same knowledge, right? So it removes all of those barriers that we would have in a community or as a people, and getting coordinated to actually make big things happen and then really see the results. All you would need is people who are really actually about that life versus just saying that they are, or people who are really creative that can do things versus those who are not willing even to teach themselves how to do it, or those who rely on others for it. So when you see that vision, you can see we're not that far from something like that. We're not that far from you moving off somewhere with your community, with your land, and developing that out to the most beautiful module that anybody has seen. This is a new innovation. This is exactly how communities of the future should be. And as I said before, not getting thrown into the Stone Ages and being like going back in time, getting back your moccasins on and everything, like, and separating from society and being alienated, like you have no contribution here, right? So yeah, that I just wanted to end with that. And watch how fast it rolls, but understand third party in conclusion is already doing this. And third party is my term for people who already have a lot of wealth, and they moved on from trying to be at the mall and trying to be, just they're not, you don't see them really anywhere. You see them in their domiciles, their communities, developing with their families. And they're even using local AI to fix their health problems, get their diets together. You know what I mean? So this is what I really visualize as a optimal part of a potential future that we can begin to inhabit, because we're merging really the best of all of these worlds, right? But yeah, I'll just leave it at that. It doesn't mean the community won't have internet at all. It just means that it won't be in that kind of way where you're just there with social media and all that and you're trying to make money. You'll actually be building things and developing those things and then shipping those things to different parts of the world. Like we manufacture here, right? So yeah, I just wanted to put that into some's minds and hearts about like what this can really turn into for them. I'm 46, so they got a certain amount of time that they say I'm going to be here, right? But let's say these cats that are still 16, 18, they're almost guaranteed to be here for another 30 years.
Right.
What is that going to really look like? You see what I mean? So if you move in this direction, it ends up as you, like, so I said, like the Black Tony Stark, Black Iron Man somewhere, you know what I mean? Creating inventions that regenerate and actually restore the ancient mysteries. And, you got curriculum. So you see what I mean? All that is more of the direction that we're progressing towards if things go well, versus all out ignorance, we're fighting and that kind of stuff. And then the last thing I want to say is also that, I can still tell over the years that the community at large may be a little bit timid about me. They may think that maybe I'm even a little hostile or dangerous. I'm not sure. But it has led to quite a few people never reaching out, even if I've even if I sent them a message before, or, just really acting in a way like they don't really want to connect. Right. And I just want to say for the record to anybody that's out there that feels in one way, shape, or form that I am some kind of enemy or adversary to them, I want to let you know that your feelings are absolutely false. And that's probably the thing that is keeping us from even growing together. And that what I've done, my point of view on the gods And my innovations and inventions have been through clear reasoning of first clearing off the table from everything and then just adding back things one by one after I check them to make sure that they actually harmonize with what we truly are as supreme beings, right? And so, yeah, I just wanted to say that. And I also wanted to give thanks to you, Brother Rich, for, reaching in and, and always, thinking of me, when, it comes time to some of this knowledge and wisdom and, and calling me up and putting me on the show. Like, your platform is massive. I think you're almost at 500,000 subscribers. That's, but I've seen it since the beginning. So I know exactly how it got this way. And it got this way because you give so many people the opportunity, even when if their message is good, it doesn't matter if they got 100 views, they're on here with that message. And it takes a lot to do that. I've even personally wanted to formulate my network in a way like that, but found that I disagree a bit too much with opinions about things. Right? It's not a good space for me, but you're like a bridge in that way. You see what I mean? So these are the things that we learn over time as we learn that the deities, if you may, are with us. The archetypes are with us. They are the people that are around us. They are the family members. And if you can wake them up to that and then give them their power, so I'll definitely be sending you your Metametrics, then it only increases us all. And imagine in a community like that, where there's much abundance, nobody's thinking, yo, it's me, I gotta have mine, because if he comes on, then he gonna take my viewers, and any of that is all gone, because it graduates into where, even like I said, last thing is, look at how in their societies, in the secret societies, they're together.
Yes.
You see what I mean? That's the main thing they teach in the secret society, is that, hey, we're all together, we're all bound by these tenets. You see what I mean? And then on our side, though, they will push to us, oh, you need to divide. You need to be separate. You need that. See, so it's separation for us. That's taught to us, but it's getting together. That's what they teach each other. You see what I mean? So we for sure we see which one benefits over time. It's like, no matter what the difference is, that's just like what 19 Keys said. We can argue about the differences in our gods when we get out of slavery. You see what I mean? Right now, it's time to talk to the leaders and tell them to talk to their communities and let them know we're organizing something so that we can get together, because we can't weather this too much more longer. Not that we wouldn't survive. I mean, we're like the cockroaches of the reality. Like, we're beetles. Like, it's about the condition. Like I said, I'm not trying to go back to the Stone Age. Like, we got big plans. Like this dude talking about canceling gravity and levitation, right? That's what Terrence is, he's talking about less friction within generators. And, we're talking about damn near perpetual power. So when you have perpetual power, you then need you need basically to manufacture something. You got to turn that power. See, that's what Tesla did. He built a big solar farm and all that kind of stuff to power the factories that make the cars, right? Other than that, you just got a bunch of power. So look at the world that we're in. Like, we got this huge sun out here, right, with all this power, but then the converter is us and our narrative and how we feel and how many other beings that are with us that we can low balance. Right? That's why that 7 wheel is so strong, is because every single person is in those archetypes. You ain't gonna miss nobody in I Ching. You ain't gonna miss no situation that happened here in the physical reality. With 64 codons, there's nothing a scenario that you can't create. You see what I mean? So we have it all here, and it's just like, this is the glorious time to unpack it. And just like this thing says, this is the last thought. You went through all of this to get to the ideal state and paradise. The labors come first. So if you figure that you're in this life and this life has been super shitty to you, right? Like, I've been there, right? Like, I visit that sometime, right? And you are destined for greatness, because this is the formula. You go through the labors and the challenges, and that's right now. So it's like eating the things that taste bad on your plate first. And then working on the stuff that tastes good, right? And that's the process that we're in right now. So Wholeness, everybody. Thank you so much.
I love the way you ended that. I love the way you wrapped that up. That was brilliant. Family, can y'all feel the change that's happening in the air, the molecules in the air, in the programs that are coming on this channel? I mean, he's speaking words, but there's a certain intention behind his words. Some of y'all feel, some of y'all just hear the words he just said, but some of y'all felt the intention behind it, and that's powerful. That is powerful. Hey, Sevan, with that being said, man, I want to thank you once again for coming on the platform.
Absolutely.
Something I want to run by you. I'm definitely gonna call you in the next couple of days. Want to talk to you about something, possible business opportunity that you might be interested in. Us just talking about collaboration. So I'm gonna give you a call in the next couple of days, my brother. With that being said, did you give them your website and all your contact info?
Yeah, actually, you put it in the description. I appreciate that. So everybody knows that, we already got the curriculum, like we call it the conscious Netflix. That's the OTT or over the top. It's everything that we've been even talking about today, because I do try to contain in all these builds everything that you need. That way, if you don't ever see me again or it rubs you the wrong way, it's still playing off in your mind when you go through a spiritual experience. Like, yo, he was talking about this though. But if you want the whole curriculum, definitely links are in the description. The mentorship is there. There's over 300 courses just in relation to metaphysics and occultism. And it's kind of like gives you the step-by-steps of how we got here, especially if some of this stuff didn't make sense. And then also the latest and greatest right now to stay in step, like, because reality is gone, right? Like they got their knowledge now, right? They act like they don't even need people anymore. They got these robots they building. Like, it's just a wrap. Somebody needs to, get the jowl under control. But the reality is that, we don't only need to stay in step, we're greater. So in my world, when each one of our children have infinite knowledge within the palm of their hand, that's going to be where I'm like, okay, we're good. And remember, you can also use Sybil in Discord for free. So there, you can go to my YouTube channel if you need more of this knowledge. So there's no paywalls. So don't actually put yourself into is it price there? There's prices there because for sure, like a nonprofit organization, we need to figure out how we're going to keep funding all of this, right? Mm-hmm. But if you just need the knowledge and wisdom, I've never seen anybody who had that intention not get what they needed. Mm-hmm. Not only from us, but also at large, right? Because just like this channel right here, there are brothers and sisters out here bringing this knowledge and message. I would definitely say support them, and our collaborations are coming together more. So, I'm always excited about the future. So that's what I have. So links are in the description. Thanks so much for that.
Indeed. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Definitely a classic show. Make sure you're tuning in tomorrow afternoon. And if you're in the ATL area, come out to our first annual Double Dutch Day. It's going to be fantastic. It's a day of family, fun, and healthy activities. With that being said, shout out to Q Reeves in the chat. I see my brother Q in the chat holding it down today. Shout out to that brother right there. He was he was at the gathering. You know about Q, right?
You can't be on the internet and not know about Q, not know about Rod, not know about Terrence, not know about, if you don't know about these guys, I don't know where you at. You know what I mean? So absolutely. That's what I'm saying. We got to get like a master panel one day going on with, everybody and, just really, make it a stable, right? Because the community really, they need it, man. Like it's kids coming every day. So that's the thing. We're on like a treadmill. So there's always going to be somebody new. And that's even what I realized in my position, because I used to teach like what I call second grade occultism, but I'd be ready to go to the master classes. That's what I'd be doing in the university. So we got basically masters at all levels. Do you know what I mean? And that's beautiful because those are the bridges.
Excellent. Hey, with that being said, we're getting out here. Thank you, Sevan. Thank you, family. See y'all next time. Peace.
Talk to you soon.
Peace, family.